But the next few years did not see Captain Clegg again on the high seas, and the notorious Scarecrow continued to ride with his night riders across Romney Marsh. In the year 1793, not only in the isolated taverns of the marsh, but in the fashionable clubs of London, two subjects of news were passed from mouth to mouth and discussed in the papers. The first of these was the Reign of Terror raging in France, terrible and bloody. The second, and perhaps more popular, the latest exploits of the Scarecrow, who, in spite of the danger in France, still managed to run contraband across the Channel. In the devil's name, who is this Scarecrow? Was the question on everybody's lips. But on both sides of the Channel the identity of this adventurer was unknown. He was the Scarecrow, l'épouvantail. There were other adventurers who played dangerous games, and one of these was Captain Fawkes, a successful gambler and soldier of fortune. Bully Fawkes played and cheated for the highest stakes in the most exclusive London clubs, and whenever he was accused of not playing fair, the noble captain sent his second immediately to arrange a duel. The captain happened to be a brilliant swordsman, and had to his record 12 gentlemen whom he had spitted in St. Martin's Fields. Yet he was not without disciples, young men of rank and fashion who admired his dash and tried to emulate his success. Such a youngster was Lord Cullingford, who, having recently come into his family title, soon found that he had mortgaged the next 3 years of his income. One night, in late autumn, Lord Cullingford left the gaming table at Crockford's, knowing that he was down to his last £300. His nerves were strained, and he resolved to go home to bed. But Bully Fawkes swaggered over to him. "Come on, Cullingford. My luck is in, but I'm quitting for an hour as I've an appointment. Take my place." "No, I've lost all day and will play no more." "Then take my place, and perhaps your luck will change all night," replied Fawkes. "Try one throw. 100 guineas round the table, and the highest takes the lot. 'Tis a quick way to earn 1,000. Play." There was something dominating about Fawkes which Cullingford, to his cost, found difficult to resist. "All right, one throw. Damn you, Fawkes, if I lose." He went to the table and threw. So did 9 other gentlemen. Cullingford lost. "Try again," cried Fawkes. The loud rattling of the dice and the enthusiastic cries of acceptance to a sporting bet in no way disturbed the flow of polished conversation being carried on by 2 gentlemen in a remote corner of the room. Seated at their ease near a glowing fire, they smoked, sipped a fine old brandy, and talked. Indeed, had the interest not been so high at the gaming table, the more curious might have wondered why a parson should be in the company of Mr. Sheridan, a notable of the theatre, but he was listening with obvious enjoyment. And although Christopher Syn was dressed in the sombre black of his calling, the cut of his clothes and the way he wore them might have put to shame any of the well-known dandies present. "I had a mind to rehearse my next Sunday sermon to you, Mr. Sheridan, so that you might gauge the quality of my acting," Dr. Syn laughed, "but I will refrain. It's late, and 'tis time a poor old parson in his dotage were abed." So saying, he rose from his chair. Mr. Sheridan smiled. "Your claim to senility is ill-founded, sir. For my part, I'll warrant you're as youthful and virile as any of those foppish fire-eaters." He indicated the crowd around the gaming table. "I thank you for the compliment, my dear Sheridan, but pray, in truth now, would you not prefer a comfortable dotage to that strident-voiced braggart yonder?" "Egad, you're right, 'tis Bully Fawkes. Have a care, Doctor, though of course your calling protects you from the rogue." As they were talking, the noise around the table grew louder. "The Scarecrow," said the captain. "I'm heartily sick of the very sound of his name." "Because his adventures are fast eclipsing your own, eh, Fawkes?" cried a voice from the end of the table. "Have a care, Sir Harry," warned Fawkes, "and coupling my name with that of an ill-bred smuggler from some outlandish place in Kent. Confound it, why can't the government rid us of this rogue? For 2 pins I'd do it myself." "The government will give you more than 2 pins should you succeed," replied Sir Harry Lambton. 1,000 guineas is their latest offer. And as I am as bored as you are with the subject, I'll gladly add another 1,000 if you rid the marshes of this scourge." In the excitement and speculation, no one had noticed the look of despair on Lord Cullingford's face. As if in a dream, he heard the voices around him. "The government offers 1,000 guineas, and Harry Lambton doubles it." The young man was desperate, and in a flash he made up his mind. Whether Fuchs went or no, he determined to try himself. Thank heaven there was one remaining good horse in his London stables. He would start at daybreak, and so, with the glowing prospect in his mind, he was able to face the captain with his usual gaiety. "Why, Fuchs, 'tis the first time I've known you to hang back on a bet. Or is it that you daren't leave town in case I cut you out with La Belle Harriet?" Stung by the youngster's banter into a quick decision, Fuchs replied hotly, "I've yet to meet the rival that I fear will oust me in the affections of any woman, just as I've yet to meet a man whose better will not take. I accept your wager, Sir Harry. I'll set off tomorrow on the morning mail. Come, drinks all round, and I'll give you a toast." Fuchs put a patronising hand on Cullingford's shoulder. "Poor Cully, you've had damnable luck tonight, but I'll take your IOU and will not call upon you till tomorrow week." It was while the glasses were being charged that Dr. Syn was strolling past the gaming tables on his way out. "Zounds!" cried Fuchs. "A parson? In Crockford's? Are you seeking the devil in cards and dice?" "No, sir. I have known both cards and dice all my life, and I have learnt that they are innocent enough. Unfortunately, the devil is sometimes in those who handle them. Your pardon, sir." And Dr. Syn would have passed on, but that the bully did not intend to lose his chance of amusement. "Come, give the parson a glass, and he shall drink my toast. Are you ready, gentlemen?" Glasses were raised in assent, and the captain proposed, "Damnation to the Scarecrow." The gentlemen drank, but the parson's wine remained untasted. "Do you not understand the toast, parson? But perhaps your parish is so remote that you've never heard of the Scarecrow." "I do not drink, sir," replied Dr. Syn, "because I thought it unseemly to drink damnation to one of my own parishioners." "Drink damnation to the rascal by all means, but all the king's horses and all the king's men have never succeeded in catching him, and I feel 'tis my duty to warn you, knowing something of the Scarecrow's methods, that although he may permit you to reach the marshes safely, it is doubtful he will let you return to London alive." Dr. Syn handed back his glass, and added regretfully, "I hope I have not depressed you, sir. Good night." And before the astonished company had recovered, the parson had left the room. "Who in the devil's name was that?" Sir Harry Lambton answered. "Did you not know? I thought Dr. Syn was as famous as the Scarecrow. He's the vicar of Dymchurch, and his courage in speaking out against this rogue is highly thought of. A learned man, well-travelled, no ordinary parson." Standing at the captain's side, Lord Cullingford had missed nothing, and he vowed that upon reaching Dymchurch he would seek assistance from this learned man. The vicar was at the moment seeking assistance elsewhere, for having made his way to the writing-room, he sat penning a list of instructions in his fine scholarly handwriting. An enigmatic smile crossed his face as he wrote the address and planned how it should be delivered to Mr. James Bone, the Mitre Inn, Holborn. Jimmy Bone was in an excellent humour, sprawled in a well-padded armchair by the fireplace of the back parlour of the Mitre Inn. He knew he was safe here. Indeed, there was not a lady between London and the Kent coast who would give information to the Bow Street runners against so charming a rogue. He read once more the letter which had put him in such a pleasant frame of mind, and then threw it into the flames and watched it burn. The following morning he was thundering across London Bridge on his horse, and in less than an hour he saw the dawn break from the summit of Shooter's Hill. The weather had cleared, and there was a promise for a fine, crisp autumn day. It was yet the small hours, but my Lord Cullingford was already awake, having had a poor night haunted by dreams of the Scarecrow. Cursing the fact that he had no servant to help him dress before setting out, he struggled by the light of a solitary candle with breeches, hose, and riding-boots. And another thought worried him. the presents in the captain's pocket of his IOU for 1,000 guineas. "The devil rot bully Fuchs," he said aloud. "I vow, if I get out of this alive, I'll see him in hell before I consort with him and his kind again." Feeling more the man as he got into his handsome riding-coat, he permitted himself one ray of hope in the dark uncertainty before him, the vicar of Dymchurch. Cheered by the thought of visiting Dr. Syn, Lord Cullingford made his way to the stables. Before long he was crossing London Bridge a mile or so behind Mr. Bone. Captain Fuchs was not in a good humour when he awoke. He had a damnable headache, and his servants were late in calling him, so that he had to rush to his breakfast. And then an unfortunate lackey was unable to secure a cabriolet to carry him to the coaching-yard, and he had to run the length of Pall Mall to Charing Cross, sword flapping and wig awry, a breathless servant at his heels, hampered by the weight of the valise. He only just succeeded in reaching the coach in time. The final indignity was being bundled in headlong by the infuriated guard as the coach was moving off up the Strand. Dr. Syn spent an excellent night at Haxall's in the Strand. It was a comfortable house, with good cooking and an excellent cellar. It was also very handy if you wanted to catch the Kent-bound coach from Charing Cross, for if you informed the guard, he would reserve your seat and pick you up at Haxall's on the way to London Bridge. Dr. Syn was called at 7 with a dish of tea into which he poured a measure of brandy. Having ordered his breakfast for 8, he strolled as far as St. Martin's Church. His steps took him past the church and into Hedges Lane, where he entered one of the many bookshops. The bookseller greeted him with a smile. "Good morning, Reverend Sir. You will be pleased to know I have a book for you. An agent from Paris left it. A French translation of the Aeneid. A fine edition, too, which I know you have long sought for." Dr. Syn handled tenderly the fine copy of Virgil. "As I received it, I deliver it," explained the bookseller, "though I should like to remove these untidy slips of paper. They are written in French, although I do not read the language myself. Bookmarks, no doubt, but they spoil the appearance of such beautiful printing." "This reader has marked the book with his own notes," said the doctor, a twinkle of satisfaction in his eyes. "Do not trouble to remove them. It will be interesting to see if he has penned any erudite ideas." A quarter of an hour later, the volume lay on the table beside Dr. Syn as he breakfasted in Haxall's coffee-room, and a close observer might well have been surprised to see him paying far more attention to what was written on the bookmarkers than upon the exquisite volume itself. And then, at 5 minutes past 10, the warning notes of a coach horn cleared the traffic in front of Haxall's, and the Dover coach pulled up, and Dr. Syn stepped inside. Yet another traveller had been awakened that morning in time to make the same journey. In the best suite at the Charing Cross Hotel, propped up by pillows and a gigantic four-poster, sat a little old lady. Over the rim of a tankard she was holding twinkled a pair of intelligent, bird-like eyes, while at her tiny wrists innumerable bracelets jingled as she gave orders to a French lady's maid. Beside the bed was perched an enormous white wig which the maid was dressing. Upon the bed, brushed and beribboned, looking like another wig, lay a white poodle wearing his own jewellery, golden bracelets that tinkled merrily when he moved his front paws. Finishing her ale, the lady stroked the dog. "Come now, Mr. Pet, time for your morning perambulation." Then she spoke to the maid. "Lizette, tell the chambermaid to take Mr. Pet downstairs and see that he amuses himself in the yard before the journey." Lizette handed the dog to the chambermaid and then returned to the wig-stand, punctuating the rolling of each curl with a sniff. "What's the matter with you, woman?" "Oh, madame, 'tis this horrid journey. No sooner we arrive in the nice London than we leave for this place called Marsh. The serving wench here told me terrible things up and down there." "Stuff and nonsense," retorted the old lady. "Romney Marsh is ruled by my own niece's husband, Sir Anthony Cobtree, whose house is within sight of your French coast. So if you don't like Marsh, you can paddle to Calais, where I warrant you'd worry more if they were good enough to leave you a head to worry with." So saying, she got out of bed. After a large breakfast with a glass of Madeira, she was in the best of humours. So, despite her 70-odd years, which she defied in a gay velvet travelling dress, her bird-like face beneath the enormous white wig, Miss Agatha Gordon of Beldorney and Kildrummy stepped into the Dover coach, followed by Lisette and Mr. Pitt. She settled herself in a comfortable corner facing the horses, the poodle on the seat beside her, and Lisette opposite. The coach had just started off when there was shouting, and the door opened, and a gentleman was precipitated into the moving vehicle. He landed head first, causing Lisette to shriek and drop the old lady's jewel case, and surprising Mr. Pitt so that he started to bark. Indeed, this hullabaloo had only just died down when the coach stopped again outside Haxall's. The door opened, and in stepped a clerical gentleman for whom it appeared the other corner seat facing the horses had been reserved. And so, 10 minutes later, with passengers and mails complete, yet several hours behind Gentleman James and Lord Cullingford, the Dover coach rumbled across London Bridge. Just outside Canterbury, at the beginning of Stone Street, Gentleman James reined up and allowed his tired horse a rest for a while. Then he rode to a local farmhouse, where he received news of the latest activities of the Scarecrow's men. He was a popular visitor, and knowing he had an hour or so to his credit in this trustworthy house, Mr. Bone relaxed, with a wing of chicken in one hand and a foaming tankard in the other. It was while Mr. Bone was relaxing that the coach crossed Rochester Bridge. The four occupants by this time had become more or less acquainted, though the captain appeared aloof and ill-mannered. His temper had not improved when the coach stopped outside Haxall's, and he discovered that the passenger who had bespoken the only other comfortable seat was the confounded cleric who had scored off him the previous night. So he stared in sulky silence out of the window, somewhat mystified that the parson did not seem to recognise him. Miss Gordon, on the other hand, had found a fellow traveller to her liking. "I'm quite overwhelmed that I should be talking to the famous Dr. Syn," she prattled gaily. She was amusing and laughed so infectiously that Dr. Syn looked forward to the journey, and was delighted to discover that she was a relation of Sir Tony Cobtree, to whom she was paying a visit. "Then I vow, madame, that you are no stranger to me, for I knew your niece, Lady Cobtree, before she married Tony, and your name has ever been a household word in the family. Indeed, Tony frequently refers to me wife's Aunt Agatha." Here Dr. Syn gave such a graphic imitation of the squire that Miss Gordon was paralysed with giggles. "'Tis Tony to the life! I have ever been fond of him, but it's many years since I've visited Dumchurch. Indeed, sir, the last time I was here, you were in the Americas. They often spoke of you. I was deeply distressed to learn of my niece Charlotte's death. She was so young." Engrossed in her reminiscences, she failed to notice the look of pain that for a moment clouded the doctor's face. "But tell me," she went on, "what of Cicely? I hear she is a fine girl. Good rider, too. Indeed, she is my godchild, and thank heaven for that, since I can't abide her elder sister Maria. 'Twas a great blow to Caroline and Tony when Maria married that French nincompoop. And now, to have a daughter in the midst of these Paris horrors must be so worrying." And so the conversation rolled on. By the time the coach reached Canterbury, their talk had brought them to the most popular topic of the day, the Scarecrow, whose exploits amused the old lady vastly. And Captain Fawkes appeared to come to life for the first time in the journey and listened to every word with avid attention. "You will understand from our conversation, sir," said the doctor, "that our marshes are not considered healthy at the moment." Then, with an admirable piece of play-acting, he peered at the captain. "Dear me, your face is familiar. Have we met before?" "Yes, sir. Last night. In Crockford's." "Of course, the wager. Pray forgive me. My eyesight, you know. At Crockford's, yes." Dr. Syn turned to Miss Gordon, adding, "May I present, ma'am, a very brave English gentleman, for he has wagered 2,000 guineas that he will catch our Scarecrow. Captain Fawkes, Miss Gordon." And so, on through the busy narrow streets of Canterbury, with the coach horn playing a merry tune, which caused Miss Gordon to exclaim, "Sakes alive, is that the only tune he knows? He's played nothing else the whole journey." Dr. Syn smiled. "'Tis the British Grenadiers, is it not? In honour, no doubt, of our noble captain here." "Oh, I know the tune," replied Miss Gordon. But what she did not know was that the honour was due to the Scarecrow, who by this ingenious method told his followers throughout the countryside of his activities. The British Grenadiers meant a false run tonight to lead the revenue astray. After a final change of horses in Canterbury, the party set off again onto the long straight stretch of Roman road that is Stone Street. At the top of Quarry Hill the coach had to be stopped for skids before winding slowly down into the tree-lined gorge. "Might be in the Highlands," exclaimed Miss Gordon. "'Tis as precipitous as the stretch we've just left is straight," said Dr. Syn. "We must thank the Romans for such lasting work. Indeed, there is much for which we must sing their praises." "Confound the Romans," said the captain, as the vehicle lurched to a stop. "They should have made this stretch straighter. I have no wish to render unto Caesar praise or anything else." "No, my fine gentleman, but you'll have to render a lot more than praise to Gentleman James," rang out a strong voice. The highwayman had timed his attack to a nicety. The coach and coachman had jumped down to remove the skid chains, and were taken by surprise by the masked figure on his great horse. The terrified Lisette broke into her native tongue, which mingled with the captain's oaths and Mr. Pitt's excitement. "Come now!" cried Mr. Bone, enjoying the joke hugely. "Who will be the first to render unto Jimmy Bone?" "Oh, no, Captain, don't touch your sword. This is my territory, not St. Martin's Fields." At that, the angry gentleman was flummoxed into silence. "Ladies first," continued Mr. Bone. "Come, miss, the guard will assist you to descend." The trembling maid, clutching the jewel case, was helped out of the coach while Mr. Bone emptied the jewels into his saddle-bag. Miss Gordon was the next to descend, which she did, all outward indignation, though secretly enjoying the adventure. Taking the rings from her fingers, she advanced fearlessly and handed them to the highwayman. "I am too old for jewellery, sir, as anyone can see, but 'tis most annoying of you, or rather 'twill annoy my niece, Cecily Cobtree, for I had planned to leave them to her. And I shall have something to say to her father if he can't keep order better than this." She handed over the rest of her baubles, and then called to the poodle, "Come, Mr. Pitt, give the gentleman your bracelets." Mr. Bone laughed as the little dog pranced around the hooves of his horse. He had taken a liking to this courageous old lady, and he swept off his hat. "Though I have robbed many a dirty dog, ma'am, I have no wish to rob a clean one, and with such a famous name to boot." So Mr. Pitt, with property intact, followed his mistress back into the coach, and Jimmy Bone peered inside to select his next victim. "Devil take it!" he cried. "A parson! I never robbed a cleric yet, though I once had the Archbishop himself in me power, and I don't doubt that he had more in his bags than you, Mr. Clergyman?" But beneath his mask he gave Dr. Syn a gigantic wink. And so the captain scrambled ignominiously out onto the road, while Jimmy Bone levelled his pistol and surveyed him critically. "Well, here's a fine gentleman, and with a fine reputation too, if I am not mistaken. Come, sir, hand over your sword, lest you be tempted to pick one of your customary quarrels with some poor Kentish lad." When the glowering captain was finally prodded back into the coach by the tip of his own sword, he had very little left other than what he stood up in. His stock in trade, guineas for gambling and weapons for duelling, gone, as were his beautiful Hessian boots. And so it was that with bulging saddle-bags and full pockets, Mr. Bone bade them a cheery farewell and rode off into the dark seclusion of the trees. The person seemingly least affected by this untoward adventure was Miss Gordon, who could hardly contain her laughter at the captain's discomfiture, as he sat, a sorry sight, in his stockinged feet. "My dear sir," said Dr. Syn, "the rascal has left you in a deplorable state. Now, I have a pair of carpet slippers in my bag. Perhaps you could— No? Oh, well, a village cobbler, perhaps. Let me lend you a guinea or so until you find yourself in funds. Oh, I insist." And the captain had the mortification of having to accept Dr. Syn's offer. He also had a nasty feeling that the parson was laughing at him. "And your sword, sir," the ambiguous gentleman continued. "Dear me, what a loss! Now, if you will permit me, I have a fine collection of Toledo blades. I used to fancy myself somewhat a swordsman in my younger days, of course. You may call at the vicarage and make your choice of weapons. Can I advise you further?" "I can," said Miss Gordon, laughing. "My advice would be that when you next go a-coaching, you should disguise yourself as a parson or a poodle." At the Red Lion in Hythe, the Dymchurch passengers left the coach, and Miss Gordon was met by a smart turnout with the Cobtree arms upon the panelling. Dr. Syn was prevailed upon to join her. Luggage piled in, they caught a final glimpse of Captain Fuchs, surrounded by laughing postboys, and picking his way gingerly across the cobbles to the bar parlour. Dusk was falling, and the smart little chaise sped along the dyke-bound road to Dymchurch in fine style. On entering the village, they saw Mr. Mipps by the churchyard wall. At Dr. Syn's request, the postillions pulled up, and the sexton, recognising with pleasure his beloved master, rushed over. Shouldering the valise, he stood waiting while the vicar took his leave. Dr. Syn begged Miss Gordon to convey his felicitations to the Cobtrees, and, excusing himself for not accompanying her on the grounds of their family reunion, promised to visit them on the morrow. With a pat on Mr. Pitt's head, he irrevocably won the old lady's heart by kissing her hand. Then, with a bow, he joined the waiting Mipps, and the chaise went on to the courthouse. Mr. Mipps, trotting to keep up with the vicar's long, easy strides, became as voluble as he had previously been silent, with a long series of the happenings during his master's absence. "And is all according to plan tonight, Mipps?" "Yes, sir. 3 cries of the curlew it is, and the British Grenadiers. But I ain't anticipating any trouble, even though there's a new revenue officer come to Sandgate. He's been nosing round here, too, and he's as smart as paint. But we'll soon blister it, eh, Captain?" "Mr. Mipps," warned the vicar. "Oh, sorry, sir, quite forgot. Eh, vicar?" The sexton then continued chatting until Dr. Syn advised him to postpone verbosity, as they had the evening before them, adding that for his part his immediate ambition centred around a strong drink. "Well, we know where the best brandy in Dymchurch is, sir," laughed Mipps as they entered the vicarage. Mr. Bone stood by the fire in the vicarage, drinking a glass of brandy, while the vicar sat comfortably on the settle. The highwayman's giant frame dwarfed the hovering Mipps as he moved about the room, filling churchwardens from a large pot of Virginian tobacco and keeping the glasses, his own included, filled. "I'm extremely sorry, my dear Jimmy," Dr. Syn was saying, "but I'd no idea that the old lady would be travelling by that coach, and may I suggest, since the Cobtrees are friends of ours," at which Mr. Bone grimaced, thinking of the many broadsheets Sir Anthony had put out against him, "that we might have a little private transaction?" "Oh, no. If you're thinking of buying back the old Scotch lassie's jewellery, then my name's not Gentleman James. I like her so well that I came here tonight with a lot in me pocket, so will you kindly return them to her with my compliments? I'd have liked to have done it myself," he grinned, "but my presence at the court-house might have embarrassed the squire. Besides, I'll make a tidy profit on the effects of that swaggering bully." Upon which, Dr. Syn said, "I shall refuse to take my tithes," and they both laughed heartily. But then the highwayman's voice became serious. "What do you intend to do with that blackguard? Do you want me to deal with him?" "Time enough for that, my dear James. But there is something I would like. A look in his wallet." "Easy enough," said Gentleman James, handing it over. The vicar went through the wallet quickly, and finding the paper he wanted, handed both back to the highwayman. "And I owe you for £1,000, eh? You're about to aid and abet some other extravagant fool?" Dr. Syn shook his head. "No, I intend to show that misguided young man the error of his ways." Mr. Bone glanced at the wallet. "'Tis so full of other IOUs he'll not miss a paltry 1,000. And since you're about to help this wayward youngster, I'll follow your example and relieve the others." And he threw the scribbled slips into the fire. And then they fell to discussing more serious matters, plotting the manner of the runs for the following week, and the false runs that should precede them, to throw the dragoons on a false scent. "What about them you-know-whats?" asked the sexton. "When are they arriving, sir?" "That's all settled Bristol fashion, Mr. Mipps," replied the vicar. "I visited our old friend Captain Pedro, whose vessel lay in London Pool. He should by this time be crossing the Channel." "Why, blow me down! That takes you back. Pedro, me old amigo." And Mipps plunged back to reminiscences of this old member of the pirate brotherhood. Indeed, they became so engrossed that it needed 3 cries of the curlew to bring them back to their feet. Mipps went to the stables to saddle the vicar's pony, while Jimmy Bone took his leave after settling his rendezvous for the following day. Thus it was that the vicar of Dymchurch on his fat white pony ambled along the marsh road, bidding a cheery good-night to a picket of dragoons, who marvelled at the vicar's fortitude when they themselves were feeling none too courageous as they watched for the Scarecrow's ghostly riders. Indeed, such courage as they had completely left them when, but a few minutes later, there came upon them suddenly, out of the encircling mist, a wild creature on a fiendish black horse. In a panic, the terrified dragoons leapt into the nearest dyke, while thundering hooves skimmed their submerged heads, and unearthly cries screamed away into the night. Earlier that day, Lord Cullingford had arrived at the vicarage. On finding that the parson was absent, he had left his card. He was hungry. Indeed, he had eaten nothing all day, having spurred his horse to its limits to reach Dymchurch before Captain Fuchs. So, feeling low in body and spirit, he had made his way to the coffee-room of the Ship Inn, where he was delighted to find that the fare, though simple, was yet well cooked, while the cellar list would have put most London taverns to shame. The only other occupant was a dragoon officer, and the 2 men were soon engaged in conversation. Major Faunce possessed a manner both frank and engaging, and Lord Cullingford was pleased to find someone who seemed eager to converse upon the one thing which his lordship most wished to hear, namely, the Scarecrow. "The ways of the Scarecrow and his gang are devilish tricky," explained the Major. "The organisation has grown over the years, and personally I don't believe anyone will stop it." Lord Cullingford's spirits soared when the Major said he had received information that there was to be a run tonight, and laughingly suggested that if Cullingford had no objection to jumping a dyke or 2, he might like to come along. The young man accepted eagerly, and having for some time been in sore need of a confidant, he found himself blurting out the full reason for his visit to Dymchurch. The kindly soldier treated him like a somewhat foolish younger brother, and though he may have been secretly amused at the thought of this stripling confronting the Scarecrow and succeeding where so many accomplished men had failed, he did not show it. So it was that some hours later Lord Cullingford, mounted on a dragoon horse, trotted by Major Faunce's side. And though the purpose of the night's mobility was but a practice for the smugglers, they saw to it that the dragoons were fooled into thinking that the exercise was the real thing. Suddenly, from Aldington Knoll there shot to the skies a mighty flame. The beacon had been lit. Signal received, the whole marsh came to life. Luggers offshore put in, strings of pack-ponies appeared, and, quickly loaded, were herded off, whilst circling the whole manoeuvre were the night riders, mounted on the swiftest horses and uttering wild cries. Major Faunce called to his men, and the troops charged, yet hard as they rode, the night riders, led by the Scarecrow on Gehenna, outpaced and outwitted them. But during this skirmish, Lord Cullingford misjudged a dyke and was heavily thrown. Upon regaining consciousness, his first impression was that he was in hell, surrounded by demons, and confronted by the arch-fiend himself. The place looked like a huge brick oven, and around him some sort of trial was taking place by torchlight. He was propped on bales, and had he but known it, he was in an oast-house and watching a trial conducted by the Scarecrow. As his lordship recovered his senses, the awesome figure was speaking. His voice was cold with contempt as he described to the hooded figures a crime of treachery and asked for their verdict, at which the ghostly jury stretched out their hands, thumbs down. The judge inclined his masked head as he uttered, "Death!" By promising to betray our whereabouts to the revenue, and hoping to gain the government reward, your body will be found tomorrow morning, hanging from the public gibbet, where you hoped by your vile deed to place us. Remove him." And the terrified prisoner, screaming for mercy, was gagged and dragged away. By this time, Lord Cullingford was well aware that he was not in hell, but in the power of the notorious Scarecrow. Indeed, upon realizing how closely his crime tallied with that of the prisoners, he was extremely frightened. When he was ordered by the judge to stand, and being helped to his feet by a night rider, he found that his legs would hardly support him. Was this to be the end of his wasted life? But then all the night riders filed away. Only his helper remained as he faced the Scarecrow, who demanded, in somewhat softer tones, "And what fate are you expecting, my Lord Cullingford?" "If it is to be the same as the prisoner I saw removed, then I ask but one thing, that it shall be swift," he replied bravely. "That man had committed the crime for which there is no pardon. You saw justice done to a traitor of our cause. Your punishment shall be to see to it that you do justice to yourself. And this may help you to do it." And he handed to the mystified young man his IOU to Fuchs. "This may remove the necessity of your trying to remove me and claim the government reward. As to Bully Fuchs, he is our common enemy. Destroy that paper, and I shall destroy the man to whom it is due." The young man, faint with fatigue and emotion, thought he must be dreaming. Indeed, before he could stammer out his thanks, the figure vanished before his eyes. He knew no more until he woke with the dawn breaking to find himself outside the Ship Inn. And yet it was not a dream, for there, clutched in his hand, was the IOU. The squire of Dymchurch was irritated by a confounded babble going on outside his bedroom window so early in the morning, and pulled back the curtains to see the cause of it. The sight of half the village staring at a corpse he hadn't convicted hanging from his official gibbet threw him into a rage. Sir Anthony had promised himself a day's relaxation, and he was deeply chagrined that the corpse would necessitate his presence in the courtroom. But he had other worries, and this was trifling compared to the sincere anxiety about his daughters. Maria married to a Frenchman in Paris, with the terror raging, and Cicely having disappeared without a word. Thanking God that Dr. Syn was back at last from London, he at least promised himself a pleasant evening, and cheered by this prospect, he sat down and wrote a letter. "My dear Christopher, I hear from me wife's Aunt Agatha that you have returned from London, for which heaven be praised. I shall be infernally busy all day at the courthouse. The reason of this you'll know by now, and I'll wager it's the Scarecrow's work. But after what will be an irritating day, I intend dining with you tonight at the vicarage. Forgive me for thus inviting myself, but I have the necessity to see you. Tony." Dr. Syn smiled as he read the letter, wondering what his old college friend would think if he ever learned the Scarecrow's real identity. His reverie was broken by Mr. Mipps coming into his room with the rest of the morning's messages. "First of all, sir, it's them British Grenadiers again today, followed by the girl I left behind me. The word is being passed, as usual. Coaches playing 'em, both voyages. Oh, Jimmy Bone. Message from him this morning. Says he forgot to ask you last night if you'll be needing him to ride as the Scarecrow for you tonight. Tell him to stand by until we know which way the cat's going to jump." "Oh, don't we know?" "I suppose we don't. Oh, talking of cats, that there revenue man's been seen prowling through Hythe. Ought to be here any minute now. Oh, talking of Hythe, Mrs. Waggett's cousin is the boot boy of the Red Lion. Apparently, Fuchs was ranting and roaring that he hadn't got no boots. Sends out for cobblers and shoemakers, but by the time he's measured, the whole place knows what he's come for. But here's the best bit of news, sir. He's passing the word that he'll challenge the Scarecrow in an open duel. Quite positive he'll win, too. Says he'll wager 1,000 guineas with anyone." "That's very interesting," replied Dr. Syn. "I wonder what the Scarecrow will do about it." "Yes, I was wondering that too." "Don't let it worry you, Mr. Mipps. Now, we've the christening this afternoon. Oh, and the Squire is dining with me this evening. I'll tell Mrs. Honeyballs. And by the way, sir, you was talking of Pedro. Will he be arriving tonight?" Dr. Syn nodded. "Yes, if all goes well, and I've instructed Pedro that all must go well. But he's a good man. I trust him where I trust few others. Now, Mr. Mipps, I have a sermon to prepare and must balance up the tithe book." An hour or so later, Dr. Syn was busily engaged upon parochial accounts in the library, when Mr. Mipps disturbed him again with, "Beg pardon, sir, but that young dandy's here. He asked most polite to see you. The fright you give him must have done him good." "Oh, beg pardon, sir." This upon noticing the vicar's warning look. "Shall I show him in?" "Yes, Mr. Mipps, I shall be delighted to make his acquaintance again." And so Lord Cullingford entered the library and introduced himself to the vicar. "The reason for my visit, sir, differs from my original intention. I come now simply to pay my respects. Happening to be at Crockford's on the night when you confronted a certain gentleman of my acquaintance, I vowed I would come to you for assistance in helping me catch or kill the Scarecrow. Oh, pray do not laugh at me, sir." For Dr. Syn was regarding him with a kindly, quizzical air. "For I was in dire distress." He plunged into a full description of all that had happened to him, ending up with a strange appeal that Dr. Syn should not judge the Scarecrow too harshly. "For, Reverend Sir, he must be a good man at heart. True, I saw him condemn a man to death, as I told you, but the Crown would have done the same. Yet what officer of the Crown would take the pains to show a foolish young man how to become a good citizen?" He then explained that he was going to take the Scarecrow's advice by avoiding his extravagant friends, and was going to join the army. "For, though I have little money in my pocket," he said, "I have gained something of great value, my self-respect." Dr. Syn admired the purpose this young man displayed, and he determined to help him further. So, with the greatest tact, he persuaded Lord Cullingford to accept a loan of some few hundred guineas. It was a little later that Aunt Agatha, having taken Lisette to see the wonders of the Dymchurch sea-wall, passed a young man coming from the vicarage, who raised his hat and gave them a sweeping bow. She remarked that she had never seen such a well-set-up young man, adding, however, that as men went, she still had a penchant for that naughty highwayman. That evening the vicar was in the library when there was a sharp knocking at the front door. "You know who it is, don't you, sir?" whispered Mr. Mipps, peering through the spy-grid. The vicar nodded. "Open the door, Mr. Mipps," which the sexton did somewhat reluctantly. A tall man stepped in and advanced towards the vicar. "Dr. Syn? Your pardon, sir. Revenue officer from Sandgate, Nicholas Hyde, at your service. I'd like a few words with you, vicar. Alone." The last word was directed at Mr. Mipps. The vicar nodded, and then requested Mr. Mipps to leave them, which the sexton did, throwing back a look of disgust at the revenue man. Dr. Syn invited his visitor to sit, and offered him a drink. Mr. Hyde took the proffered glass, while Dr. Syn watched him as he lit his churchwarden from a taper at the fire. The revenue man, feeling it was his duty to watch people and not to be watched, shifted uneasily. This was not at all what he had expected. Here was no ordinary village parson. Realizing that he could not use his bludgeoning manner here, he decided on different tactics. "Let me be frank with you, sir. I am here to lay that rascally Scarecrow by the heels." The vicar, raising an eyebrow in surprise, asked him why he had not gone to the Squire. The revenue man, begging his pardon, explained that he had been informed that Sir Anthony Cobtree cared more for his foxhounds and port than he did for maintaining the law. At this the vicar protested. "You do him an injustice, sir." Mr. Hyde apologized, and explained that he had no wish to offend, but that suspicion being his trade, he must, of necessity, suspect anyone who could tally with the Scarecrow's description, adding with conciliating jocularity, "Why, I might even suspect you were you as good a rider as Sir Anthony, and not known to be one of the Scarecrow's sworn enemies. That's why I seek your assistance." At this the vicar seemed amused, and asked how he could help. "I want you to tell me, sir, any suspicions you may have regarding the questionable activities of your parishioners." "Mr. Hyde, if I can be of any help to you by preaching more strongly against this evil, I most readily agree. But I should be a disgrace to the cloth were I to betray the sorry little secrets of my flock, black sheep or white." "You are spoken of as a good man, Dr. Syn, but I venture to think that you've not been so closely connected with crime as I have." With this the vicar agreed. "Possibly not, Mr. Hyde. Possibly you could teach me a great deal." Then, seeming suddenly to change his mind, he suggested that perhaps they should work together after all, adding with timid eagerness, "Do you really think we could catch this, rascally Scarecrow?" This was the attitude that Mr. Hyde understood. "All in good time, parson, though if all goes well tonight, I may not need your help, for Major Faunce and his dragoons are already combing the marshes." Dr. Syn seemed most interested, and the revenue man, flattering himself that he was on the way to getting what he wanted, continued aggressively. "That infernal Scarecrow had the audacity to send me a note with details of tonight's manhunt, but I'll fox the rascal. I have another troop of dragoons well hidden in Rate's building yard." The vicar stared at him in admiration. "Well, Mr. Hyde, I fail to see how this rogue can ever pit his wits against you. Now, whoever would have thought of the building yard? Indeed, I see that I cannot go wrong if I listen to you." The revenue man was by now convinced that his first impressions of this clergyman were wrong, and that he was, after all, as simple as the rest of his class. He rose and said that he had better be about his business. The vicar escorted his visitor to the door. "Good night, Mr. Hyde, and thank you. Your confidence is flattering and most enlightening." Dr. Syn closed the front door, and then called for Mipps, who he knew would have been listening at the keyhole. Then, dropping his voice, he spoke quickly and urgently. "You know the plans for tonight, but warn the men to keep clear of Rate's yard. Put sentries round to report any movement of dragoons. And now we know which way the cat is likely to jump. Tell Jimmy Bone, when he returns as the Scarecrow from the false run, to ride out again and see that the remaining dragoons upon the marsh are well and truly lost. I shall not need him tonight for the run proper. I must do that myself. There will be too many decisions to be taken on the spur. That's all, I think." And then there was another knock on the door, and the vicar smiled. "The squire, I believe." "My good Tony," he said, after he had greeted his friend, "the new revenue man has just paid me a social call." "What?" shouted the squire. "At this time of night? Why didn't he come to me? Suppose he thinks I can't keep order." "Now, really, Tony," said Dr. Syn in all sincerity, "you should have heard the things he said about you." The squire was mollified, assuming that the revenue man had paid him compliments, but then he realized he had more important things to talk about. "Really, Christopher, that confounded highwayman, stopping the Dover coach with me wife's Aunt Agatha. Must have been Gentleman James because of his good manners. Damned bad manners, I call it. Taking the old girl's diamonds that she was planning to leave Sicily. Oh, but you don't know that Sicily's disappeared. Bad enough to have a daughter in France, all those upstarts cutting people's heads off all over the place. Then Sicily going off. Said she was going to stay with the Penburys, but she didn't go there. And just when I want you most, you go off preaching in London, and only returned yesterday. No, I'm worried, Christopher." Dr. Syn urged that there was really no cause for anxiety, and that Cicely had most likely changed her mind about the Penburys and had gone to stay with other friends, that probably she had written, but the mails were unreliable. The squire, always influenced by what his friend said, was only too eager to be cheered up, and so, saying that Christopher was probably right, he accepted a large brandy from his host. It was while they were sitting talking after dinner that they heard movement on the gravel outside. "Probably that revenue man snooping around," said the squire. He jumped up and went with all possible haste to the front door and, flinging it open, found that his way was impeded, for there, on the doorstep, were two large casks. He was annoyed at not being able to get out, but equally mystified as to why such things were outside the door. "I say," he said as the vicar joined him, "perhaps they've left them. You know who I mean, Christopher. They," and he mouthed the word smugglers. An even better thought then struck him. "Let's bring 'em in." Dr. Syn seemed doubtful, suggesting that this was a matter for the revenue man, at which Sir Anthony was highly indignant, telling the vicar in his best judicial manner to report this to him in the morning. So, after a great deal of struggling, in which Mr. Mipps had been summoned to assist, both barrels were successfully manoeuvred into the vicarage. Heated from his exertions, the squire could hardly wait to tap the barrels, and Mr. Mipps, having conveniently produced a spigot, was delightedly setting to work when he noticed some chalk writing on the side of the casks. "This one says, 'For our parson, from the Scarecrow.' This one's, 'For our squire.'" At that moment there was a loud knocking on the door, while from outside came what were obviously noises of the military riding off. Mipps, already at the spy-hole, whispered dramatically, "It's Major Faunce, sir." Sir Anthony, fearing that the law might cheat him of his cask, asked Mipps to tell them to go away. But then the full horror of the situation dawned upon him. Here he was, the chief magistrate, receiving smuggled goods. "I think we should find out what he wants, Tony. The door, Mr. Mipps." Sir Anthony, nearly crying with vexation, endeavoured to disguise his own barrel by draping himself around it. By this time the door was open, and Major Faunce had come in. "I beg your pardon, sir," said the Major, addressing Dr. Syn, "but I was told I should find Mr. Hyde here." Dr. Syn explained that Mr. Hyde had left some time ago. Then he asked why the soldier was so caked in mud, to which the Major replied that his dragoons had been in and out of dikes halfway round Kent, after that fool of a revenue man had sent them on a wild goose chase. Dr. Syn was most sympathetic, and asked the Major if he would care for a drink, while the squire, who had been endeavouring behind the Major's back to keep himself out of sight by the window, inwardly cursed Christopher for a forgetful fool. "Thank you, Vicar. Very civil of you." Major Faunce, thus relaxed, glanced around the room, and perceiving the squire, advanced to greet him, catching sight of the barrels as he went. "Good evening, squire." It was the squire's embarrassment which prompted Major Faunce to give closer inspection to the barrels, and upon reading the chalked inscriptions he became grave. "So, gentlemen, I see you've had other visitors tonight besides Mr. Hyde, while my dragoons are sent off to the other side of the county, misled on purpose, I see. Nice little plot." He warmed to the subject as he recollected the discomfort to which the revenue man's stupidity had put them. But on second thoughts, was it stupidity? Perhaps they were all in it together. So he said aloud, "I'm afraid this looks mighty suspicious, Vicar." "Oh, I assure you, Major Faunce, we know nothing about it. We've had a quiet evening here discussing parochial affairs, and then we found the barrels in the doorway. Naturally, the squire, as lord of the level, wished to make an investigation at once, and—" "Much to your surprise, you discover they are addressed to you," interrupted the Major, "and you bring them inside." At this the squire lost patience. "Well, damn it, man, what did you expect us to do? Stand and look at 'em? It's got my name on it. It's a gift. That's law." "A bribe, more like," parried the Major. After so many years together in wild adventure, Mipps and his master had developed a system of signalling, almost thought-reading. This had now been put into action and resulted in the most innocent-seeming interruption from Mr. Mipps. "Begging your pardon, sirs, for interrupting, but the vicar asked me to remind him about Mrs. Woolley's complaint." The vicar thanked Mr. Mipps warmly, as indeed he had forgotten all about it. He begged the gentleman to excuse him, but he must ride out and see the old woman. "But you'll not object to my staying here, Vicar?" said the Major, who had no intention of losing sight of the barrels. "Not at all, Major." Mr. Mipps helped him on with his coat, and the Vicar thanked him, adding an extra benediction on his good servant, reminding him of his duties. Then, turning to the Major, he requested, "Pray, Major Faunce, do not fail to let me know what spirit those barrels contain. I must preach a very strong sermon against it next Sunday." And with the pleasantest of smiles he went out to mount his fat white pony. And as the Major watched him ride away, he felt a trifle ashamed for having entertained the slightest suspicions about such a good and kindly soul as the Vicar of Dymchurch. If, however, he too had been able to read thoughts, he might have felt differently. Sir Anthony was peeved. It was deucedly embarrassing being left alone with Major Faunce. Why on earth had Christopher insisted on letting the man in? Major Faunce, meanwhile, was wondering what to do with the barrels. "I suppose we'd better get these over to the courthouse and put in bond for the revenue man." "Don't know how we'll get 'em there," said Mr. Mipps. "I'd give an hand myself, only what with me grave digger's elbow I haven't got a lift left." The squire had an idea. "Well, let's dispense with the revenue and open 'em out here, out of hand. 'Twill not be against the law. Magistrate, witness." He glowed with anticipation. Major Faunce agreed, pleased at the chance of showing the revenue man how to do his job, and he ordered the sexton to open the barrels. But Mipps was there already, attacking the vicar's cask with the knowledge of an expert. Then he stopped. "Here, there's something wrong with this barrel. Got a false top. Hope it ain't going to blow us sky high." Mr. Mipps was nearly blown sky high, for as he spoke, the top of the barrel flew off, and a pistol was presented at his head, as over the rim of the cask the head and shoulders of a girl appeared. "Haut les mains!" she cried. The hands of all three men shot up in bewilderment as they stared at this wild figure, hair a mass of tumbled auburn curls, her lovely face alight with fierce excitement. And then she stared around the room. "Great heavens, 'tis the vicarage! Papa! Then we are safe across the channel. He did smuggle us. Don't look so scared, Papa. 'Tis Cicely." The squire's fright and relief at seeing his daughter almost turned to anger. "Damn it, girl, where have you been? Thought you were going to stay with the Penburys." "Pray don't be cross, sir. I can explain. I've been to France." "France? What do you mean, France?" "Have you seen Maria?" "Lord, Papa, I'd almost forgotten Maria," and with a wave of her gauntleted hand to the other cask, she said, "She's in there, and when you let her out, I warn you, sir, she'll start screaming. She's had a terrible time, poor lamb, but this barrel smells like herring hang. Dear Mr. Mipps, pray give me a hand." Mipps leapt forward to help her as she scrambled out and stretched luxuriously. "Oh, it's wonderful to be home." Then she ordered Mipps to open the other barrel. As soon as the lid was off, the Major stepped forward to help the lady out, but there came such piercing screams that he jumped back. "Get away from me, you great French brute! Cicely! Cicely!" "It's all right, Maria. I'm here. We're home. You can come out now. Here's Papa." Up from the barrel leapt a distraught figure in a great travelling cloak. Her blonde hair hung limply around her tear-stained face. On reaching the floor with the help of Mr. Mipps, she rushed sobbing to her father's arms. "Papa! Papa!" she cried. But then, determined that others should share the horrors she had been through, Maria plunged into lurid descriptions of how terrified she had been, of how Jean, her husband, had left her in Paris all alone in their great house, of how all those ugly people came and frightened her, and then how Cicely came, and she had looked ugly too. Cicely had shouted and behaved in a horrid manner, and that dreadful man kept ordering them about. He had been half naked, with a picture on his arm, a ghastly picture of a shark, tattooed, like sailors have. They never saw his face because he wore a hideous mask, but the crowd seemed to know him because everywhere he went they shouted, "The Scarecrow! Vive l'épouvantail!" "Pay no attention to Maria, Papa. I told you she was hysterical, poor pet." Cicely glanced around the room and changed the subject quickly. "But where is the host of your party? Where is our beloved Dr. Syn?" Major Faunce stepped forward. "He was called out to visit a sick woman, but I am here on business, Miss Cicely. In the King's name, I must ask you to tell me more about this French scarecrow." "She'll explain to me first, sir," said the squire. Cicely went over to her father and kissed him and asked to be forgiven for having caused him so much anxiety. "You recollect, Papa, how anxious we all were about Maria. I did not tell you that I planned to help her, for I knew you would not let me go. Oh, 'twas easy enough to get there, bribes and a fishing smack. And in Paris, all I had to do was make myself the complete sans-culotte and shout and scream with the mob. I know the language, thanks to you, Papa. As to the man Maria talks about, well, there were so many wild characters I fear she must be confused. She was alone in that great house, the servants having fled, and all the time the mob was getting nearer. We were forced to witness some dreadful scenes." "But 2 girls alone," said the squire. "Someone must have helped you, Cicely. Was it this French scarecrow?" "Everyone in Paris looks like a scarecrow," cried Cicely. "They've all gone mad, wild. Scarecrow, l'épouvantail, they all shout, but it might mean anyone. They might have meant me, for I look scarecrow enough." "They did not mean you, Miss Cicely." The voice came from the shadows by the front door. Harsh, impersonal, yet with a hint of humour, it continued. "Your revolutionary clothes suited you admirably." All had turned suddenly, and there was no mistaking who it was. There he stood, masked and mysterious, the dreaded Scarecrow himself. No one could move, for he held 2 heavy pistols in his hands, and bowing said, "L'épouvantail, at your service." Major Faunce's hand flew to his belt, but the harsh voice rapped out, "Don't move! I have you covered, sir." And thereupon, seeing the sexton, he ordered him to disarm the major. "We don't want to rob the revenue man of the little surprise I have prepared for him." Mr. Mipps rapidly removed the soldier's sword and pistol. "Now, little man," ordered the Scarecrow, "assist the gallant redcoat into that convenient cask." The major's first instinct was to refuse, but the Scarecrow went on inexorably. Come, Major. If the ladies can use these to travel across the channel, surely you will not mind a little trip along the sea wall. Why, I envy you the experience of seeing Mr. Hyde's face when he opens the barrel. Make haste, Major." The reluctant soldier squeezed himself into the barrel, and Mipps secured the specially constructed lid. Then the Scarecrow went swiftly to the door and opened it, calling 3 times the eerie cry of the curlew, and from the shadows came 3 masked and hooded figures. Upon swift orders from the Scarecrow, they picked up the barrel, waiting while he changed the wording on it to, "For Nick Hyde, Revenue Man," with compliments from the Scarecrow. And then the men departed. "I must apologize, ladies, for my somewhat crude sense of humour," said the Scarecrow, returning to the room. He turned to Cicely. "May I express my gratitude for your admirable attempt to keep my identity a secret?" "It was the least I could do, sir, after this goose here blabbed all. Maria, Papa, have you no word of thanks?" Maria buried her head in a cushion on the settle. "I don't want to speak to him. Papa, tell him to go away." And then, hoping for sympathy, "Oh, 'twas terrible, the discomfort." "Fiddlesticks," said Cicely impatiently. "The discomfort of a few hours is better than losing your head, miss." The squire, agreeing with Cicely, said that he was naturally indebted to the Scarecrow for what he had done, but damn me, he was placed in such an awkward position. As magistrate, he ought to arrest him, at which the Scarecrow, bowing low, asked him if he would care to try. Sir Anthony blustered that it would be a poor sort of gratitude. "But what made you do it, sir?" The strange creature turned towards Cicely. "You have a daughter, Sir Anthony, you could be proud to call a son. Ask me how I knew of her brave venture. I have spies everywhere, and I have ever been in love with the gallant spirit of the marsh." "But why did you have to bring them back in the barrels?" The Scarecrow laughed. "Because, my dear sir, the one thing that always crosses the channel safely is my contraband." Cicely told her father that as English aristocrats they had been in great danger in Paris. Maria had refused to disguise herself in dirty rags, and they would have been denounced had it not been for their good friend here. This gentleman had seen to everything. Every time they were in difficulties, he appeared. Their papers, the horses, the right word at the barriers. Oh, she realized now that she could not have done it alone. Going to the Scarecrow, Cicely held out her hands. "How best can I thank you, sir?" "It seems by imploring you to leave, as each moment you remain is but adding to your danger." The Scarecrow thanked her for her concern, but said he would wait until the vicar returned. "I have to pay him my tithes. Tonight will be a considerable sum, since my cargo was such a valuable one." Then, addressing the squire, he suggested that he should escort the ladies back home. "Could I not stay?" asked Cicely. "I should like to see a meeting between the Scarecrow and our Dr. Syn." "I'm afraid I must disappoint you, Miss Cicely, for this is business. Tithes are 1/10 of what one is worth, so you might too easily calculate my estimation of your value." The squire, pleased to get back on familiar ground, said that tithes were tithes, and all honest men should pay them. Then, realizing that he had said the wrong thing, coughed loudly and prepared to take his leave. Bowing with a "your servant, sir," he led Maria to the door, while Cicely, with a look of amusement in her eyes, lingered behind. "I am most certainly going to ask our dear old Dr. Syn to stop preaching his horrid sermons against you," she said, smiling. Then, turning swiftly, she followed the others. Cicely crossed the bridge that led from the front door onto the sea wall. She saw the others ahead of her, but made no haste to catch them up. Standing for a while in the moonlight, she felt almost sad to be home again, though her instincts told her that she should feel differently, because what had made her happy in France was also here in Dymchurch. Her discovery filled her with an exultation she hardly understood, and she turned and faced the dark, familiar outline of the vicarage. Then, flinging her gauntlet gloves down into the vicarage garden, she raced across the glebe and overtook the others. It was when they were going through the lich gate that Cicely stopped. "Oh, lad, I've lost my gloves. I may have dropped them. Papa, you go on. Don't wait for me." And so saying, she sped off. While Cicely was crossing the glebe field for the second time, Mr. Mipps was crossing the hall of the vicarage with an enormous tome. "The tithe book, sir, for your settlement with the vicar." He spoke, apparently, into thin air, for the room seemed empty. As he walked, he elongated himself, as if trying to make himself taller. "You seem to have acquired a stiff neck, Mr. Mipps." The voice came from behind the lectern. "'Tis not the marsh ague, I hope?" "'Tain't nothing to do with ague," snapped Mipps. "I'm hendeavouring to acquire a few henches. Little man, you call me, in front of the others, too." The voice from behind the lectern continued. "Your ability for acquiring knowledge of current affairs, Mr. Mipps, would make me respect you were you a giant." "And your ability for making yourself laugh may get us all in trouble," retorted Mipps. "Now look here, Captain, if you persist in rolling up your sleeve, we're sunk." It was then that Cicely decided to knock and put her head around the door, causing Mr. Mipps to turn as though he'd been shot. Upon seeing her, he relaxed and went towards her. "Mr. Mipps," she whispered, "has the Scarecrow gone?" He nodded. "Yes, miss." But was that the right answer? He hadn't looked behind the lectern. Was it Dr. Syn or the Scarecrow? "Oh, what did you say, miss?" An impersonal voice came from behind the lectern. "Is someone asking for me, Mr. Mipps?" "Yes, sir, that is, it's Miss Cicely, sir. She's come to see Mr. Scarecrow, sir." From behind the lectern appeared Dr. Syn. "Why, Cicely, child, how glad I am to see you back. Mr. Mipps has been telling me of your extraordinary adventures." Mipps had had enough, and he hurried off. Cicely uttered a cry of disappointment. "Why, it is only our dear old Dr. Syn." Then, upon seeing that the vicar was looking somewhat hurt, she begged his pardon and told him how she was glad to see him, explaining that the reason for this late visit was a pair of gloves which she thought she may have dropped here. "Though I must confess that the gloves are an excuse, for I wanted to see the Scarecrow paying you his tithes." Dr. Syn looked at her with not a little curiosity. "Why, Cicely, what is this sudden interest in tithes?" She glanced up at him, eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Oh, 'tis not a sudden interest. I just wish to see if I'm good at reckoning. Was it a large sum?" Dr. Syn peered at her vaguely through his spectacles. Let me see, child. Well, if I remember, 'twas a mere trifle. At this she seemed full of concern, saying that she had long suspected that his eyesight was failing and that she hoped the Scarecrow wasn't cheating him, for he had told her most distinctly that tonight's cargo was a very valuable one. "Come, let me see those glasses," she said with pretended anxiety. Then, with motherly care, she took them from his nose and looked through them, saying that, as she had expected, they were little better than plain glass, and that he should visit her father's oculist in London. But for her part, were she his physician, she would order him to throw away his years and not add to them, stressing that without his glasses he might well be old Dr. Syn's younger brother. "No, no, do not move," she said, for Dr. Syn was trying to escape the beruffled hands that firmly held his arms. "Yes, you are pale. Perhaps 'tis exercise you need. Jogging about on that churchyard pony cannot be good for you. I will ask Papa to give you a more spirited mount, and I will teach you to ride." There was a hint of a smile in the doctor's eyes. Indeed, he had no need of glasses. He saw as well without them as with their protective, ageing screen. "Perhaps Dr. Syn's younger brother could teach you more things than you have ever dreamt of, Miss Cicely," he said, quietly. "But I fear I am not he. Now, let us talk of something that interests you more." "Then let us talk of the Scarecrow, for he is the most interesting man I've ever met, and I do not believe the rumour that he is a ghost. To me he seemed most real. Aye, and with a heart, too, for I felt it beating on the ride from Paris when my horse failed. 'Tis true he appears and vanishes like a ghost, for I was swept from the saddle before I felt the horse stumble, but down it went, and I might have gone with it but for a strong arm that certainly did not belong to a spectre." The vicar was amazed, and said what a terrifying experience it must have been to be in the arms of such a desperate character, to which Cicely replied that she hadn't been frightened at all because of his superb horsemanship, but she had to admit that she had been troubled. For the most part he had spoken to me in his rough French, but then we rode in silence. Her voice now took on a seriousness. But I felt that he knew me, and in some strange way I had known him all my life. Yes, and that we were being swept onto something more vital than escaping the mob. The vicar moved away and sat by the fire. "It seems that this man has taken occasion to be more than a rogue," he said gravely. "Oh, but he is no ordinary adventurer." Cicely went and knelt at his feet. "Indeed, he is a very wonderful person." "Dear, kind old Dr. Syn, tell me what I should do, for I am fathoms deep in love with this pirate." Disturbed and shaken at the words she used, he asked urgently, "What are you saying? You cannot be serious. A man whose face you've never seen. Oh, in spite of that foolish mask, I should love him were he as ugly as sin." She was laughing up at him now. "Have you stopped to consider that this madness could not be?" he said quietly. "I cannot, nor do I desire to stop. My thoughts are his, and if he should command my life—" She knelt up straight and put her hand on his arm, toying with the buttons on his coat. "I shall have no one else if he does not love me. I shall become the spinster of the parish, and devote myself entirely to good works. Maybe I should commence with you." She looked down at that intriguing arm. "Why, what did I say? Your sleeve. You have a button loose. My first good deed shall be to sew it on for you." He gently removed the inquisitive hand and rose slowly to his feet, the look of fierce concentration on his face changing to one of calm purpose. Making no haste, he drew off his coat and let it fall. Then, deliberately rolling up the right sleeve of his frilled shirt, he gently placed his forearm over the shoulder of the kneeling girl, as though forcing her to look at the tattooed mark upon it. She did not turn her head, but clasped the arm to her. "But, Cicely, do you realize what this mark is?" "'Tis but the picture of a man walking the plank. I saw it first in Paris upon the arm of a most notorious character." The doctor fought desperately, reasoning with her against himself, that the tattoo upon his arm was the mark of the pirate Clegg, who should have hung in chains on execution dock, that it was the mark of a hunted lawbreaker who ruled the marsh by fear. 'Tis also the mark of the vicar of Dymchurch, revered by all that know him, and dearly loved by Cicely Cobtree, spinster of the parish, she answered simply. Though knowing he had already lost, he made a last attempt to save her. Without mercy, he accused his threefold personality, pirate, smuggler, parson, of being an unholy trinity. And of all the three, that saintly parson was but the worst of the hypocrites, mouthing his smug sermons and hiding black deeds behind the pillars of the church. How could you love a coward? She rose to her feet and stood before him. Coward in one thing only, you will not say what I await to hear. His despair was triumphant as he laughed at her glorious audacity. "Then not even you shall call me a coward," he cried, and she was in his arms. After some while she asked, "And how much did the Scarecrow pay?" "Pay, child?" To tease her, he became again the kindly vicar. Then, holding her at arm's length, he said, "All the wealth that was Clegg's when he sailed the Caribbean would not suffice to pay those tithes. Does that satisfy you?" She did not answer, but stood gazing at him. "No? Would you have me sail up the Thames and loot the crown jewels to lay at your feet?" "Why, Captain Clegg, should I then be richer than I am?" she asked. "There is but one thing I now desire. Dear, kind, old Dr. Syn, pray stop preaching your horrid sermons against my beloved Scarecrow." He laughed and drew her swiftly to him, for Christopher Syn had remembered to forget the pirate's slogan, "No petticoats aboard." And so it was for the third time that evening that Cicely crossed the glebe, but this time in the company of Dr. Syn. Upon reaching the courthouse, he kissed her tenderly good night, vowing that he would visit the next morning. "I do hope poor old Dr. Syn will not be jealous of his younger brother," Cicely whispered, "for in truth I am fathoms deep in love with that unholy trinity." And she was gone, laughing back at him as she ran across the flagstones. He stood and watched her, smiling at her tall, youthful grace, and then turned and strode off down the village street. He was not in the mood this night for the joggings of his churchyard pony. He laughed aloud when thinking again of her audacious offer to teach him to ride, and a great longing seized him to let the world know who he was and the things that he could do. And thus, exalted, he left the village and strode out across the marsh. Some 20 minutes later he reached Mother Handaway's barn, where 3 men were sat around a table, talking and drinking. Heaped into a pile in front of Jimmy Bone was an assortment of trinkets, though as a rule these gifts were bestowed carelessly enough for services rendered. Upon this occasion Mr. Bone seemed unable to make up his mind. "Steph," he cried, scratching his head, "I cannot tell which one would suit her best." Mr. Mipps and Captain Pedro looked up from their conversation. "Can't you find anything to your liking, Jimmy?" asked Mipps. "What colour is the young wench's hair?" Mr. Bone laughed and confessed that he didn't know what colour her hair was, as she wore the most enormous white wig and was well nigh 80. "Why, blow me down!" cried Mipps, "if that don't sound like Miss Agatha Gordon." "That's the party," said Mr. Bone. "As nice a little old lady as ever I robbed. I'm giving her back her jewels, but I want to apologise with a keepsake." Captain Pedro was too astonished to speak. He could not understand how it was that so fine a caballero as this highwayman should be so heart-troubled by an old lady. He was hoping to hear more when the door opened and Dr. Syn entered. "'Tis good to see you, Pedro," the doctor said, going over to the table. "You managed the last business so well and with such care for the valuable cargo that I am reluctant to send you back to France so soon. Mipps will have told you that there are 2 prisoners to be taken to our friend Duloge in the Somme. There is no one who can slip through the blockades like our Pedro." "Ah, no, my captain. There is you." "Would that I could have been with you, my friend. The call of the sea remains as strong as ever, but you did well. I got your message. Ah, the bookmarks. 'Tis good, our system of the post at the bookshop. Talking of messages, said Mipps, had one from Vulture. That Cooper dragoon got to Sandgate lovely, and Vulture found 2 more lurking about that he popped into barrels for the revenue man. Left him on his doorstep. You're asking for trouble with Mr. Hyde. He'll be Mr. Seek now. Dr. Syn laughed and then looked at his fob watch and said it was time to be saddling up. You ride with Mipps, Pedro, and the luggers will take you off during the run. Mipps, saddle Gehenna now, while I have a word with James here. Mipps nodded and went out with the captain. So, Jimmy, what news? Said Dr. Syn. Well, I have something I think will interest you. And the highwayman drew out the wallet he had taken from Captain Fuchs. I've had much experience with gentlemen's wallets, but this one puzzled me. Handmade, beautiful stitching. There it was, in my hand, empty, although it didn't feel empty. So, Gentleman James being curious, I ripped open the stitching, and inside here was this. He drew from behind the outer leather a thin folded paper, which he handed to Dr. Syn. I can't read French, but I can read a name. Dr. Syn turned to the name and gave a long whistle of astonishment. Then he quickly read the letter through. Here's a stupendous piece of news indeed, he said gravely, though I had an inkling something was afoot. As you've gathered, it is written by none other than Robespierre himself to a Monsieur Bassard. I'll deal with it, James. All I can tell you... Upon that instant, the nearby hooting of an owl was heard, and the door opened. Dr. Syn quickly replaced the letter in the wallet as Mipps entered. Owls is on, sir. Better be quick. Mr. Bone quickly picked up a few trinkets, telling Dr. Syn that he meant to make a personal apology to Miss Gordon with one of them, and which did he think suitable. The doctor began to make his choice, when Mr. Mipps, who was inspecting some of the other pieces, cried, Here's the very thing, Jimmy. He held out a brooch, a dog's head carved from crystal and set in gold. The very thing indeed, said Dr. Syn, and although not a poodle, it does bear a faint resemblance to Mr. Pitt. Mr. Bone agreed and besought the doctor to give it to the lady. And a few minutes later the wild mounted figures dashed from the stable and galloped seawards, whence came the twinkle of innumerable lights as the flashers sent their messages around the marsh for the run. On the beach, the Scarecrow clasped the hand of the Spanish captain and whispered, When you meet up with Toulouse, bid him from me to watch out for a certain Monsieur Bassard. And now the sea awaits you, my friend. Farewell. Standing on the sand, horse and man motionless, Dr. Syn watched the lugger until it was out of sight. The next morning, Dr. Syn, happening to perceive from his study window a last remaining rose on his favourite tree, went out to pick it, and there below this lovely challenge to the winter he found Cicely's gauntlet gloves. In spite of his night's activities and lack of sleep, he felt alive and exhilarated. He had promised to breakfast at the courthouse, but as he was about to leave, Mrs. Honeyballs announced Captain Fuchs. The captain entered the library and bowed. I trust, sir, you will forgive my intrusion at this hour. But the weather being fine, I thought a gallop before breakfast would benefit my health, and finding myself at Dymchurch, I thought of your invitation. Why, Captain Fuchs, of course. You're very welcome. The coach, I remember, dear me, that highwayman. Now, let me see, what was it you wanted? Ah, yes, a weapon. Yes, he took your sword. Well, you shall have the choice of my armoury. The doctor pointed to a corner of the library. Captain Fuchs was surprised to see the finest collection of Toledo steel that he had ever set eyes on. As I told you, sir, the vicar explained, in my youth I was considered not without promise in the art. I have made my little collection over the years, more or less as a hobby. Of course, please take your choice. The captain appeared overwhelmed, and told the vicar that although he would be delighted to avail himself of his generous offer, he had in truth only come to pay his respects. Dr. Syn smiled, and said he hoped the captain was feeling invigorated after his little rest cure in their humble corner of the world. "For," he continued, "did you not say you were visiting the coast for your health?" "No, of course not. How foolish of me. It all comes back to me. Your wager. You're here to rid us of our Scarecrow. Is that not so, sir? That was the only reason for your visit, was it not?" The captain appeared relieved at this question, and having selected a sword, Dr. Syn noting with amusement that he had chosen the finest in his collection, he went on to say that there was something else, that he had come to the vicar for assistance. He had heard that Dr. Syn was such a good man that even the miscreants of his parish approached him for guidance, and even paid their tithes. So he wondered if it would be possible for the vicar to convey a message to that confounded highwayman. "For, sir, not only did he take my sword and boots, but he deprived me of something of great sentimental value. In short, my wallet, given me by a dear friend. If he would return it, I am willing to pay a large reward without complaint to the authorities." The vicar said that he never knew when these naughty rogues were going to bob up next, but it must be most irritating for you. A wallet. All one's private papers. So intimate. I feel for you most strongly, sir, and will certainly do my best. The captain had the curious feeling that the vicar was laughing at him, but he still hoped to make use of him, and continued, "And, sir, were you to be so fortunate, shall we say, as to meet the Scarecrow, I would be grateful if you could convey a message to him too." The doctor said that although he could never betray the confidence of his flock, black or white, he would do his best. "And, sir," he went on, "if I am successful in arranging this meeting, perhaps you will do me the honour of allowing me to be your second in the duel." The captain looked surprised, but before he could reply, the vicar continued, "I heard of your offer to meet the Scarecrow in open duel. It is none of my business, I know, but I am at a loss to understand your motive, for a gentleman of your means cannot be in need of such a paltry sum. A personal matter, no doubt? Some slur upon your character? I quite understand. Forgive my impertinence." The vicar appeared to be so concerned that Fuchs went on further and told him, very confidentially, that his challenge to the Scarecrow was in reality a blind, that he had no wish to kill him but to meet him, as he was entrusted with a proposition from a certain gentleman called Massar. He felt sure the Scarecrow would not refuse the offer, as it came from a man with unlimited power. Indeed, the captain now played his trump card, he will not dare refuse when he learns from me certain information gleaned from the distant Caribbean seas. If these words meant anything to Dr. Syn, he did not show it. In fact, he appeared not to understand. "I see my meaning has escaped you, sir," said the captain. "Your way of living would not have brought you into contact with the pirates of the Caribbean seas, and one in particular, the famous Clegg." The vicar appeared bewildered. "But what have the mortal remains of Captain Clegg, which lie buried in our churchyard, to do with what you have been telling me?" "Because, through certain knowledge of this Clegg's activities, and what I have learned about the Scarecrow, I'd stake my last card that they are one and the same. You look astounded, sir, but I had no difficulty in convincing a gentleman I met last night. Major Fawn said that he had the same suspicions years ago, but nothing came of it, and nothing will come of this, if the rogue does what I ask." The captain appeared to have every confidence of success, so Dr. Syn did not protest, but anyone seeing his look of astonishment would never have guessed what was really in his mind. So the captain thanked him again for the loan of the sword, and took his leave, riding back to Hythe with his trophy. The Cobtree family was already at breakfast when Dr. Syn reached the courthouse. The squire was in excellent humour, but for one thing. Those confounded smugglers had used his horses again, and there wasn't an animal fit to ride today, with the exception of Cicely's mare Stardust, whose stall had been marked with a chalked cross. Since Dr. Syn's arrival, Cicely had been intent on stirring her cup of chocolate. Upon her father's remark about Stardust, however, she glanced up. Dr. Syn was looking at her with a twinkle in his eyes, and she returned it boldly. Aunt Agatha caught that interchanging glance and knew what it meant, and she was delighted. After breakfast, however, she had some flutterings on her own account, for upon leaving the morning room with Cicely and Dr. Syn, he collected some things that he had left on a chair. He then turned to her and with a low bow said, "A tribute to what every woman should possess, and which you, Miss Agatha, possess in abundance, wit, charm, and courage." Then, handing her a bundle tied in a silk handkerchief, he said, "This with the compliments of Gentleman James to his wee Scots lassie, and this, madame, with mine own regard, hoping I have found a true Scots friend." The old lady took the crimson rose, curtsied, and answered softly, "Well, sir, ye have paid such tribute to an ancient Scot that she will ever try to maintain the friendship that you ask." Cicely watched this touching scene, and her heart glowed. But then Dr. Syn turned to her, and taking from his pocket a single glove, he handed it to her. "And beneath the tree from which I plucked my solitary symbol of admiration for your aunt, I found," and his smile was not devoid of mischief, "this solitary glove. I fear you have lost its fellow." And so it was that in one morning Dr. Syn had bestowed several trophies, loaning the first to a man he did not like, and bestowing the others upon 2 women that he loved. If Mr. Bone had experienced difficulty in selecting a suitable gift for a lady, Aunt Agatha appeared to be having equal trouble in the choice of one for the opposite sex. The jewels so lately returned were spread over the bed, and she sorted through them while Cicely sat and watched. Proudly pinned to the old lady's bosom was the gold brooch with the crystal head of a dog. "Oh, but that we had something pertaining to his naughty trade," she laughed. "A tiny pair of gold pistols, a silver spur." Cicely suddenly jumped up, exclaiming, "Why, madame, I believe I have the very thing," and off she went to her own room, returning in a few minutes. "There, will this not suit your naughty bow, ma'am?" She held out a gold riding-crop set in the form of a pin. "Pray, take it, ma'am. 'Tis one I bought myself after I first cleared the broad dyke." Aunt Agatha was delighted. "'Tis the very thing. But since I am sending the gentleman something that belonged to you, I shall give you something that he returned to me." The old lady handed the girl a large velvet case. Cicely opened it and saw a magnificent set of diamond ornaments, necklace, earrings, and stars for her hair. She could only gaze at them while Aunt Agatha continued, "You can wear them at my birthday party. I told your mamma that she was to excel herself, since it will be my 80th, and I think I deserve it for staying the course. I intend to write some invitations this morning. There are but 2 gentlemen that I care about in the vicinity, that dear Dr. Syn and that sinful young horseman, and I vow I shall invite them both." It was some time later that Mr. Mipps found Dr. Syn in his library, studying a map of the continent. "Not thinking of hoisting canvas, are you, sir?" he asked hopefully. The reply was not what he had expected, having so many times before received curt no's or "remember to forget, Mr. Mipps." This time, however, the calm "Yes, Mr. Mipps, tonight," made him execute a few steps from the hornpipe. But then the vicar's shattering "Alone, Mipps, and not what you're thinking," brought him back to earth again. But he brightened when he listened to the vicar's plan. "That's the best one I've heard yet, sir. Wish I was a-going with you. Now, what's me orders?" "To begin with, what ships lie in Rye Harbour ready to sail?" Mr. Mipps rattled them off, and the vicar made decision on the 2 brothers. "She's fast, and I like her crew. Get word to them that I shall be aboard before high tide, and tell Jonathan Quested he must sail me round to Rye at dusk, for I shall be staying there in my capacity as Dean. And I shall want you to deliver some letters for me. The one addressed to Captain Fuchs must be handed to him at the Red Lion the day after tomorrow. 'Tis his invitation to meet the Scarecrow. Then," he added casually, "the other I want delivered tonight, when I have gone. 'Tis to Miss Cicely, explaining why I cannot ride with her tomorrow morning." He met the sexton's quizzical gaze and grinned. "I am to have my first riding lesson on a proper horse." "Serves you right if you falls off," snorted Mipps. "Riding lessons. You. From a petticoat? But talking of petticoats, I met Miss Agatha's maid earlier, and she gave me these." And he took from his pocket 2 envelopes. This one's for you, the other's for Mr. Bone. There's something in it, too. Ah, Jimmy has made a conquest indeed. Perhaps this will explain. And he opened his own letter. My dear friend, as I have every intention of becoming 80 upon the 19th of this month, I wish to celebrate with a party, which should not be complete without you. Indeed, I shall be desolate if you fail, for I fear my only other beau will not be able to attend. I'd give my wig to see our Tony's face if he did. I have writ him an invitation, and returned his compliment with a token, so would be mightily glad if you, with your knowledge of black sheep, would see to its delivery. Cicely seems so chagrined at the loss of her glove that, although she carries it with her all the time, I had to give her some diamonds to make up for it. I shall insist that she wears them at my rout, at the risk of losing my last remaining beau, so pray do not disappoint us. Yours affectionately, Agatha Gordon. P.S. I have also writ an invitation to the Scarecrow, which I hope he will also be good enough to see comes to his hand, i.e. black sheep. Dr. Syn smiled when he thought that the old lady had noticed what the Squire and Lady Caroline had missed, and would never dream could happen. So, telling Mr. Mipps to see that Jimmy Bone's letter was delivered, with some added instructions that made the little sexton howl with delight, he penned an acceptance to Miss Gordon. He left Cicely's letter to the last. Cicely, I am going on a visit for a few days with my younger brother. Pray do not worry, for I shall be back in time to compare your eyes with Miss Agatha's diamonds. It may interest you to know that I am not jealous of my brother. I have an idea that I am younger than he is. Christopher. P.S. Pray inform your father that I am gone across the Kent ditch. 'Tis his fault. He should never have made me Dean of the Peculiars. Paris. Dusk was already falling on another day of bloody entertainment for the mob. This was the Reign of Terror, reaching its peak but a month before, when the head of the beautiful Queen had rolled into the basket under la guillotine. That was a feast indeed, and appetite, whetted by the blue blood of royalty, became voracious for any food that bore the faintest resemblance to the once powerful class the mob used to fear. Yet inflaming the populace still further was, strangely enough, a man of outward refinement, Maximilien Marie Isidore Robespierre. All-powerful, Robespierre stood, this evening, at the window watching the crowds in the Place de la Révolution. Suddenly there was a disturbance. A latecomer elbowing his way through the screaming, red-capped women who tried to detain him. "Vive l'épouvantail!" they cried, but he pressed on. He passed beneath Robespierre's window and knocked upon a postern door. He was admitted immediately and conducted to an upper room. Robespierre greeted him with, "Welcome, citizen l'épouvantail," then, with a wave of his hand towards the window, asked, "And how does this organization compare with yours? I see your popularity here almost rivals mine, but of that later." He motioned his visitor to be seated at a long table. Behind his mask, the Scarecrow smiled cynically, summing up this vain, mediocre man. Robespierre was dressed fastidiously in a well-cut velvet coat of claret colour, knee-breeches and stockings to match. His hair was powdered and brushed back above a tilted nose and protuberant eyes. Robespierre, scrutinizing in his turn, was irritated that he could not see his opponent's eyes, and requested him to lay aside his mask. The Scarecrow shook his head. "Your pardon, citizen. That I cannot do. For 'tis my bargain with Gehenna that when I wear these clothes and ride with the Black Devil, it is not meet that any man should look upon the blasted face of sin." "Then keep your mask, citizen, and let us do business. Barsar has worked quickly, I see. He told you of my plan? Well, what do you think of it?" "Since I do not know your Bassar, citizen, you could hardly have told me of your plan." "Then why are you here?" Robespierre put out his hand to seize a bell upon the table, but the Scarecrow's hand was already there. "Do not be alarmed, citizen. This meeting, I assure you, is entirely my idea. I also have a plan. I will unfold mine first. You must know that my organization is vast and unassailable. The only thing that ever crosses the channel safely is my contraband. I have lived for the people, and my love for my countrymen in England is as great as yours for the people of France. Therefore, I come to place myself by your side. Together we can do much." Robespierre was amazed. His great eyes protruded still further as he said excitedly, "But, citizen, that is my plan. My hope is that together we can make liberté and equality spread to England. Keep sailing with your contraband, but give me the constant passage for my agents, who can spread our ideas of freedom in your land." He leant over the table, and taking up a dossier, he showed the Scarecrow the names of 6 of his best agents who already had their orders. They would, he said, throw the country into confusion, and if more were sent with every run of contraband, very soon they would achieve their object. He had already perfected a plan to overthrow the government, the monarchy, and that sacré Englishman Pitt. Intoxicated now by his own conceit, Robespierre painted such a fabulous picture of a united republic with himself at the head that the Scarecrow marvelled at the man's audacity. "When can you sail?" Robespierre cried. "Immediately!" The Scarecrow's prompt decision pleased the madman. To augment the dossier in the Scarecrow's hand, he gave him 6 others, each proving the hold he had on these agents. And as he listened to the rascals chuckling over the description of the spies, the arch-schemer was satisfied that his agents were in safe hands. Details were arranged. 3 men would meet him at the Somme. The other 3 would ride with him from Paris, and, much to the Scarecrow's satisfaction, Robespierre penned a letter giving Citizen l'Épouvantail safe passage. For him, all barriers were to be open, and no one was permitted to unmask him. In short, this citizen rode on the Republic's business. "How do I get in contact with this Bassard?" asked the Scarecrow. "And I must ask you for his dossier, too. I shall feel safer if I can question him. Dates, places, so that I know he is your man." Robespierre nodded and went to a cabinet, as he answered, "I rejoice to see that my Lieutenant-General in England is so thorough." He selected a paper and handed it to the Scarecrow. "There, citizen, read this with the others at your convenience. Here is a man I should not choose to be my enemy." The last drop of the knife for that day sounded outside the window, followed by a cheer from the mob. The Scarecrow stood up. "I will leave you now with this promise. Citizen l'Épouvantail accomplishes all that he sets out to do." Then, after drinking a toast to the success of this same citizen, Robespierre graciously accompanied his visitor to the postern gate. On his journey to the Somme, the demon rider of Romney Marsh could not have been accompanied by 3 worse fiends had he been the very devil himself. And when they reached the rendezvous, the other 3 proved every bit as evil. But this did not distress the Scarecrow. It made his plan the easier to carry out. He gave instructions to his own lieutenant, the engaging Duloge, who organized the fleet of luggers from his secret harbour. Then, after making arrangements with the captain of the 2 brothers to take the 6 agents aboard, the Scarecrow joined them, and the voyage began. Safe from the French, the Scarecrow's only fear of serious interception was from the British, and on this voyage he decided not to be a passenger. He took command, and in the dark hours before dawn, no lanterns showing, he ran the gauntlet of a British line of men-of-war. It was the old Clegg that navigated the 2 brothers back to Dungeness. As they sailed towards the blackness of the beach, the Frenchman heard 3 hoots of the owl, which were then answered. "Is all prepared?" the Scarecrow called. "Aye, Health Point here, and men and horses ready," came the reply. In a few minutes all were transferred from deck to saddle, and then, following the Citizen l'Épouvantail, they set off along the seawall road. As they rode, the Scarecrow reined his charger alongside that of Hellspite. Leaning down in the saddle, he whispered, "What of the beadle?" "It was too easy," said the little sexton. "He ain't got no head for liquor, that one." They did not ride into the village of Dymchurch, but made for the marsh fields behind the church. Here they dismounted, and the Scarecrow told the Frenchman that he was taking them to his underground headquarters, where there would be food and drink. Then they crossed a bridge and stumbled down some steps, where a door was silently unlocked. Hellspite lit a lantern, and the Frenchmen found themselves in a bare room, the only furniture a long table and 2 benches. "'Tis like the Bastille," said de Coutier, one of the agents. The Scarecrow produced a bottle of cognac. "Drink, citizen de Coutier, then see your fellows have some, and do not spare it, for there is a cellarful to hand." He thumped the wall behind him. "And a kitchen fit for a king's magistrate, I vow. You must be silent, but that's no bar to merriment, I hope." Then the Scarecrow and Hellspite tiptoed out. The door shut, and then it happened. The awful creeping cold of doubt as all around the table heard the creaking of a lock shot home. Mr. Mipps felt very well that morning. He had had the sort of night he revelled in. Drink, tobacco, and the story of his master's adventure had carried him back to the good old days. He had laughed until his sides ached, drunk himself sober, and smoked so many pipefuls that the room had resembled a channel fog. And it so happened that it was a foggy morning. A blanket of mist enveloped the marsh as he hurried along with the vicar towards the church, and this same fog occasioned an accident. Opposite the churchyard, Mr. Mipps tripped over something. "Ow, me poor leg! Why, blow me down if I haven't gone and tripped over the stalks, and knock me up solid if there ain't some naughty person in them." He peered closer. "Why, vicar, it's the beadle!" "The beadle, Mr. Mipps?" "Now, whoever could have put him there?" said Mipps. "Oh, what a wicked man! He smells of drink." At that moment the beadle opened his eyes and groaned, and managed to tell them that he couldn't remember anything since he had left the ship inn the night before. He demanded to be let out. "Well, you're the beadle. Where's the key?" asked Mipps. He knew perfectly well it was in the beadle's pocket, where he had put it the night before. The beadle argued that since he wasn't no acrobat, Mr. Mipps had better help him, and sure enough, the key was found. Upon being released, the portly beadle was so stiff that Mr. Mipps felt obliged to escort him to the court-house lodge. 20 minutes later, Mr. Mipps opened the vestry door and grinned at the vicar. "All according to plan, sir. The beadle feeling a bit guilty-like, said he'd better see what had happened in his absence, though as the cells had been empty, he wasn't expecting no trouble. Well, down he goes, and he found the whole room full of it. He reads 'em papers with the Scarecrow's signature was pinned on the door, and then he sees 'em, all 6, sleeping like babies, and that there Lord-a-Bum brandy bottle beside 'em. I done what you said. Told the beadle not to breathe a word to none, but to report it quick to the squire." At that moment there was a rap on the door, and a muffled, excited whisper. "Christopher! Christopher, are you there?" Mr. Mipps winked to the vicar, plainly said, "And now we're off." "Good morning, Tony," said Dr. Syn as the squire entered. "I'm just returned from Rye, and did not expect to see you till the birthday festivities tonight." "Festivities?" snorted the squire. "It won't be only birthday festivities we'll be having when this news reaches London. I say, Christopher, the most astounding things happened. I suppose I ought to send a messenger hot-foot to Mr. Pitt." "Miss Agatha's poodle?" No, I don't mean that little brute. I mean the Mr. Pitt, the Minister of War. As far as I can see, Christopher, I've got 6 French spies in my courthouse, a present from the Scarecrow. And damn me, I don't know what to do with them." "But how do you know they're spies?" asked the vicar. "How do I know? Because I can read." The squire took from his pocket a number of papers that he slammed down on the vestry table. "Read for yourself. They were fastened to the door of the common cell, and if this don't prove them to be as dirty a lot of scoundrels as the man who put his signatures to them, that Robespierre, then my name's not Anthony Cobtree. But I ask you, Christopher, what in heaven's name should I do?" Dr. Syn told the squire that in his opinion the whole thing should be kept quiet, and that he, as chief magistrate of Romney Marsh, should go to Mr. Pitt and tell him everything. "You realise, Tony, that the Scarecrow has done you a service which will reflect much honour on you." This the squire did realise, and agreeing that the matter should be handled in great secrecy, asked how he could account to the village for the 6 prisoners in his cells. Dr. Syn's advice was that he should instruct the beadle to put out the rumour that they were smugglers. It was further decided that Major Faunce should be taken into their confidence, and Mipps was dispatched to require his presence immediately. So, within an hour, under military escort, the beadle, the chief magistrate, the vicar and the sexton descended to the cells. As the door clanked open, 6 pairs of drugged eyes opened. Truth dawned on their stupefied brains. Here was no symbol of the reign of terror, citizen l'épouvantail, friend of Robespierre, but the calm, impersonal strength of English faces, backed by the scarlet of the English military. Standing out from this group was the tall, black-robed figure of a priest. 6 pairs of eyes closed desperately in the vain hope that this was but a dream. Cicely swept into Aunt Agatha's room like a golden cloud, and both ladies regarded each other with approval, exclaiming simultaneously, "Lud, how pretty you look!" "But," said Cicely, "it is the wrong word. You look magnificent," which in truth the old lady did. Her ruffled gown of white and silver brocade and her high white wig turned her into a royal figure. She wore little jewellery save for her earrings and the dog's head brooch. "And I vow you look magnificent too, child." The gold of Cicely's dress showed off the warmth of her skin, and Aunt Agatha's diamond necklace was clasped around her neck. "And I have some news," said the old lady, deciding to tease Cicely. "The dear vicar has returned from Sussex. Had you heard?" "Why, yes, indeed, ma'am." Cicely knew full well what the old pet was after. "After our tedious feminine day in Hythe, I begged Mamma to stop the carriage and let me out, saying I needed some air. I should have run mad had I not seen him before tonight," she laughed. "There, ma'am. Now I've said it. Am I not a forward hussy? I saw him at the vicarage and kissed him too. Oh, tell me what to do, for I shall never love another. And I dare not tell the family. I suppose 'tis not the proper thing to marry one's father's college friend." "Fiddlesticks! You can marry Methuselah if you're in love with him. Dr. Syn may try to make himself out as old as Methuselah, but he has not convinced us. Has he, my love?" Before Cicely could reply, there was a knock on the door, and Lisette arrived, saying that the dinner guests were all assembled and waiting. The 2 ladies looked at one another in guilty amusement. Then they sped along the gallery and peeped over the banisters. "We've timed our entrance to a nicety," whispered Aunt Agatha. "Just look at Dr. Syn. Why, nobody would accuse him of being Methuselah now. I never noticed his broad shoulders before. How elegant he is tonight." Indeed, Dr. Syn was in such suspense that he had forgotten to be the parson. For the first time in many years he almost hated his protective cloth, and longed to appear before all these good people in Captain Clegg's scarlet velvet. But above all he wanted her to see him in his swaggering glory, instead of this creeping churchyard black. He almost cursed himself for his cowardice in not declaring who he was. But then he saw her coming down the stairs, and his heart melted. Since this was an informal dinner before the main body of guests arrived, the small dining-room was used, and as it was a family gathering, with the exception of Sir Henry Penbury and Major Faunce, the customary ceremony was dispensed with. With the dismissal of the servants after each course, the conversation became unhampered by necessary caution, and the chief topic was the strange happenings in the cells that day. Sir Anthony was in fine fettle, cock-a-hoop that he was to ride to London the next morning to visit Mr. Pitt. He gave vivid descriptions of what he would say, pardoning the Scarecrow a dozen times, and then condemning him again, until Sir Henry cried out, "But you can't condemn the rascal, Tony. Don't you see the Crown must have him for a witness? He must be pardoned. Here, much to everyone's astonishment, the quiet voice of Cicely broke in upon the conversation. Has it occurred to anyone that he may not want a pardon? For my part, I do not think he does. Major Faunce agreed. I have a theory, shared by some others, that the Scarecrow is none other than the famous pirate Clegg. Cicely did not trust herself to look at the doctor, but sat, her heart contracted in the grip of fear, while Faunce went on doggedly. If it is true, then his pardon would be doubled. Can they pardon a high-seas pirate? Sir Anthony was emphatic on this point. The Crown can pardon anyone it pleases, but they've got to prove he was Clegg, and how would you set about that? The calculating voice of the soldier answered, Because, me dear sir, the mark of Clegg is on his right arm, a tattoo of a man walking the plank with a shark beneath. Here Maria broke in excitedly, But that was the picture on the arm of the man who rescued us from Paris, and... There was a sudden splintering crash, and Cicely's glass shattered against the candelabra, spilling its wine. She was profuse in her apologies, but she had achieved her object, for by the time it was cleared up, people were wondering what they had been talking about. Cicely looked round as though challenging anyone to reopen the subject. 2 people alone noted this and loved her the more, Aunt Agatha and Christopher Syn. But Maria would not be put off, and turning to her sister continued, You seem to forget who I saw in Hythe this morning, Cicely, when you and Mamma were in the bonnet shop. I don't think the Scarecrow's as wonderful as all that. Since Monsieur Barsat is once by, he is not caught. Now everyone was all attention to Maria, and she went on triumphantly. He is the leader of Robespierre's spies, and a very dangerous one. It was he who forced my poor Jean to do all those terrible things, and then betrayed him. And then you know what happened. Here she became tearful, and started to tell Major Faunce how her young, foolish husband had been denounced and guillotined. It was at that moment that Lady Caroline, thinking that her daughters had taken too much licence in the conversation, rose to her feet, and the other ladies followed suit and accompanied her to the drawing-room. But hearing the orchestra tuning up, she begged Cicely to hasten to the ballroom, as the guests would soon be arriving. So, for the next hour, Cicely played the hostess, launched the party, received and introduced so many people, and danced with so many others that she had no time to think about herself. It was after one of these duty dances that, looking up, she saw the vicar standing in the midst of a crowd on the gallery, which had been thrown open to the villagers and was thronged with eager, shining faces. He saw her. Indeed, he had been watching for her, and he made his way down towards her. "Why, Cicely, child," he said in his best parochial manner, "you must not overtire yourself. I know you will find it hard to tear yourself away from all these young men, but I prescribe a rest and a glass of punch." He put his hand on her arm and led her through the hall. Not a word was spoken, but she seemed to understand, for she ran from him to return with her cloak, and together they went out. In the muddy drive he stopped, picked her up, and carried her in his arms through the lich gate to the church tower. Kicking the door open, he went up the spiral steps to the battlement roof. Here he set her down, and holding her at arm's length, they neither of them spoke, but were content to gaze. From some mid-distance came the hooting of an owl, and in a dry dyke half a mile away a pair of merry eyes looked up in the direction of the tower, waiting for a signal. It came, a vivid flash, answered from far away by moving lights that joined and came towards the watcher, while the hooting of the owls grew louder, moving with the lights towards Dymchurch Tower. Miss Gordon had had a lovely evening. It was nigh 12 o'clock, and she was seated in a cosy alcove, listening to the music and watching all that was going on, surrounded by the lords of the level and young officers of the dragoons. But then, at the stroke of midnight, the orchestra struck up a different tune. On the first notes some quickly hushed titters were distinctly heard in the gallery. Agatha Gordon laughed outright, for the tune was none other than the British Grenadiers. Then, suddenly, the ballroom was full of masked figures who moved swiftly in and out, driving the company before them with cocked pistols. The guests were too astonished to protest. Some thought it was a joke, for it was all so swift and orderly. And then, from the great window behind the orchestra, there leapt a fearsome figure, masked and cloaked, who cried out, "The Scarecrow, at your service! Do not be afraid. I have come to pay my respects to the lady whom you are honouring tonight, Miss Agatha Gordon." If anyone was afraid, certainly Miss Gordon was not. She revelled in it, as with great strides he reached her and swept a low bow. "Will you give me the honour of treading a measure, ma'am?" he said. The crowd were aghast. What audacity! But this lady merely dimpled and held out her hand, for she had seen that predominantly displayed upon his black cloak was a golden riding-whip. He called for a minuet, and the company, watching spellbound from a distance, saw her talking and laughing. To a graceful rhythm the dancers moved, the tall, gaunt Scarecrow and the little silver lady. Point down one, point down two, sweep, bow, curtsy. "I got your invitation, ma'am," he whispered. "I wouldn't have taken the risk for anyone else." Sweep, bow, curtsy. "You're a naughty, wicked rogue, but I hoped you'd come." "I see you're wearing my brooch, ma'am. So, I hope I'm forgiven." "I see you wear mine, sir. You certainly are." The Scarecrow had moved nearer to the pillared entrance, where, spying a figure dressed in black, he called out, "Why, Dr. Syn! Come, sir, let me see if you dance as well as you preach. 'Tis my command. We'll dance a foursome. Bring out the golden lady standing by you." Here was entertainment indeed. The villagers hung open-mouthed over the gallery. The parson stepped out onto the floor, and sweeping a most accomplished bow to Miss Cicely Cobtree, gave her his hand. The band struck up a jig, and the strangest dance that ever was began. All four were voted good, but the villagers had it that the vicar was by far the best, while the four dancers never enjoyed themselves so much. The music stopped midst thunders of applause, but when it seemed that the Scarecrow was about to leave, Miss Gordon had a sudden inspiration. "Since I have granted you your wish and trod a measure," she cried, "I have a request to make from you. There is a problem to be settled. Some say the Scarecrow is none else than Captain Clegg the pirate, and bears upon his arm a strange tattoo. Come, sir, roll up your sleeve and end this argument for good and all." The spectators held their breath, while the Scarecrow swiftly rolled his sleeve and showed his forearm. There. Such a burst of cheering had never yet been heard in Dymchurch, while the Scarecrow, bowing over Miss Gordon's hand, whispered, "You're the bravest, cleverest Scots lassie I have ever had the privilege of robbing and dancing with." And he was gone, and with him went the night riders. The cheers from the villagers continued. As for Miss Gordon, she could not think of when she had enjoyed herself so much, and she chuckled at the audacity of Mr. Bone, while fully appreciating who had been at the back of all this scheming. So she was very glad she had had the sense to explode for him the theory about Clegg. Now Clegg could rest in peace, unless someone was very careless. So she gave herself a mental pat on the back, and felt that for 80 she had not done badly. On leaving the Red Lion at Hythe about this time, Captain Fuchs was in high spirits. Dr. Syn's letter was in his pocket, telling him that he had arranged his desired meeting with the Scarecrow and asking him to present himself at the vicarage at 4:30 on the morning of the 20th, as the place of assignation was but a short distance from his house. Fuchs was confident that the Scarecrow would see eye to eye with Bassar, and he intended to get a written agreement authorizing them to use the smugglers' fleet. He laughed out loud when he thought upon his next step, which was to carry out his original plan and win the wager. When all was said and done, one could always find a use for 2,000 guineas. While the lights of the Red Lion were still glowing behind him, these intoxicating thoughts seemed only to need this 5-mile ride before materializing. But as he rode on, the way curved in and out of the dikes, and with every yard grew darker. He peered into the blackness, trying to distinguish road from dike, Then, suddenly, his horse shied, and the captain, cursing, thought he saw a scoffing, luminous face grinning at him from across the dyke. He looked again, but it had gone. Then he became aware that there was movement on the marsh, and whether he went fast or slow, he heard the sound of horses' hoofs behind him. In the distance came an angry rumble of thunder. By the time he reached the vicarage, he was cold and extremely uncomfortable in mind and body. Dr. Syn was waiting for him, and begged him to come and warm himself by the library fire, while Mr. Mipps sought his horse. After a glass of grog in this pleasant atmosphere, the captain recovered something of his spirits. He asked Dr. Syn what arrangements had been made, and whether the Scarecrow would have his followers with him. He explained that he had had an uncanny ride, and that he would welcome Dr. Syn's presence at the meeting. He wanted to get the vicar on his side, because he realized that should he be seen killing the Scarecrow after he had struck a bargain, he must show some very strong motive, and determined to use the excuse that he was ridding the community not only of the Scarecrow, but Clegg as well. So he brought the conversation round to the question of the pirate's identity. "Well, sir," the vicar remarked blandly, "if the Scarecrow is in truth the pirate Clegg, there is only one sure way of proving it. The tattoo upon Clegg's arm. Why not take this occasion to provoke him, dare him to show it to you, and then—" He gestured vaguely. "Oh, I know you told me you only desired a meeting, but really, sir, think what a benefactor you would be in ridding our community of this tyrant." Captain Fuchs was amazed. "'Sdeath," he thought, "the parson's positively bloodthirsty." He warmed towards him, and now he was sure of his cooperation, he became again the confident swaggerer. "Come, then," he cried, "one more drink, a toast to a death that shall be nameless, and let me couple it with a long life to Dr. Syn." With a charming smile, the vicar raised his glass. "To a death that shall be nameless, and," he chuckled, "long life to Dr. Syn." The captain regarded Syn appraisingly. "I'd a mind," he said casually, "to go unarmed. But you are so persuasive, I think it would be best to carry swords. I take it you're still willing to be my second?" The vicar seemed childishly delighted. "I will most certainly go as your second, but you have so imbued me with a fire to destroy a villain that I wish the pleasure were mine." Here Bully Fuchs so far forgot the respect due to this wolf in sheep's clothing that he clapped him on the back, saying that he was glad to meet such a sly dog. As the two men left the house and crossed the bridge onto the sea wall, a vivid flash of lightning lit up the sea, which, as the thunder rolled away, made the darkness denser. Each with a flaming pitch-torch held high, they made their way, casting fantastic shadows on the narrow grassy track, one side a sheer stone drop to the sea. The track widened about a lookout hut, and here the parson stopped. "This is the spot," he whispered, and stuck his torch into the wind-rift sand. "Wait here, for I am pledged to go alone and tell the Scarecrow that this is not a trap." And then Syn disappeared into the darkness. The captain stood above the sea, watching the fireplay of November lightning around the brooding clouds. Then, suddenly, a voice behind him, harsh and imperious, rang out, "The Scarecrow waits for no man, Captain Fuchs." Fuchs turned and saw what had been described to him 100 times, though face to face 100 times more terrifying, as in this weird setting the pitch-torch flickered its unholy light up the gaunt figure to the horrors of its grim carved face. Even as he watched, it spoke to him again. "L'épouvantail, at your service, Monsieur Barsard." The captain stood silent, his mind too paralyzed to adjust to what this strange creature had just said. Then he was asked a question. "What is your business with me, citizen spy?" He had no answer. Forcing his frozen intellect to explain how this man knew his secret, he remembered the missing wallet. The highwayman. Could he be? He had heard rumours. Then the Scarecrow threw something towards him. His wallet. He bent eagerly to pick it up and thumbed it furtively. "The paper is still there," said the Scarecrow, "though you will have no further use for it. The proposal that you thought to make has been attended to, for I do not accept terms. I make them, and I made them to Citizen Robespierre." Dimly, the captain grasped one thing. It sounded as though the Scarecrow was on their side, and yet he told himself he must be careful. But where was the parson? Why had he not returned? He got a reply to this unspoken question. "The parson will be with you soon, Captain, but we still have a few points to clear up. It would interest me to know why Captain Fuchs, a leader of the London dandies, should interest himself in making England revolutionary. Was it perhaps that unfortunate affair that sent you out of the country all those years ago? Robespierre supplied me with 6 of his best agents. I have their full dossiers. He also generously provided me with yet another, a most enlightening document, taking one from a military scandal in England in the late 70s to the Caribbean Sea, then back to France, then England and the fashionable clubs with a reputation as a swordsman. And in frequent crossings of the Channel, a reputation as a secret political agent and an announcer of fostered friends. So, Captain Fuchs, seeing as you and I know so much about this Monsieur Bassard, it will not be difficult for us to keep all 7 spies of Robespierre in their place. And if we are to work together, I realize that I must offer you an equal guarantee." The Scarecrow quickly thrust out his right sleeve, and picking up the blazing torch, held it over his outstretched arm, upon which was clearly visible the tattoo mark of the pirate Clegg. "Here's proof enough to kill a man," he cried. Fuchs' spirits soared. "I accept your guarantee, sir. It will be a great day for the Republic when Citizen L'Epouvantail, alias Captain Clegg, is working for them. When do we start?" What happened then was as quick as the lightning which now flashed continually about them. For the Scarecrow's mask and cloak were tossed aside, and there was Dr. Syn, smiling dangerously. 6 spies are in the courthouse cells, and the 7th is before me. Draw, Captain Traitor, and fight to lose your wager." For a second, Fuchs stood aghast, dumbfounded as the sword of his opponent came to life, flashing blue fire as the lightning ripped along the steel. Then, with a great cry, he slid his blade from the scabbard and leapt forward to the attack. Syn was ready. Steel met steel, and for a frenzied 5 seconds hissed and rasped as the darts of lightning caressed both blades, spurting from point to point. A double thrust by Fuchs was parried by Syn. He laughed wildly and with satisfaction as Fuchs leapt back. Now the lightning seemed to be coming from his eyes. He waited, alert, poised for the next move. It came slowly, blades pressing and sliding in a husky whisper. Still, Syn did not attack. Fuchs thought he knew his plan, to wear him down and thus keep fresh himself. He did not fear that strategy. A younger man than Syn, he knew he could outdistance him. If Syn would not attack, then he would, showing what speed could be. He leapt and thrust, seeking some weakness in the guard that faced him, but meeting that same baffling calm now so familiar to him. He rushed in now like a lithe bull, hoping to break down the defence by weight. Syn leapt aside with riposte, but if Fuchs thought he was wearying him, he was wrong, for suddenly Syn was at him in attack, and Fuchs was driven back before this amazing speed. Then, for some minutes, the blades clanged and spluttered, and the torches held high in hand wreathed smoke about the fighters' heads. And up and down upon that flat sea wall they traced their wild manoeuvring in the close-cropped grass. Then the attack stopped as suddenly as it had begun, and Fuchs thought, "Ah, he is the older man. He will not stay the course." And so it seemed, for the retreat went on, with Fuchs unflagging, driving. He thought it was the beginning of the end, but was puzzled by the change of ground. They had fought on grass, but now they fought on wood. The wind here had power, as though they were exposed on some high place. He longed to look about him and cried, "Where are you driving me, you devil?" A calm voice answered, "It seems that you drive me, but have a care. We have a bare 4 feet, a sheer drop either side." It was then that Fuchs heard above the wind the rushing torrent of dike water meeting the sea, and he realized with sickening horror that they were fighting on top of the sluice gates. He remembered them, and thought of the black, malevolent ooze so far below. He knew he had been trapped, and rage filled him. He suddenly flung his burning torch at Syn's face. Syn saw it coming like a meteor. His blade flew up, and with the flat he struck the flying missile, sending it hurtling out to sea. He felt a sudden numbness in his hand as Fuchs' thrust caught his upturned arm. By the look in Fuchs' eyes he knew that he had failed to make him drop his sword, and was waiting then to pounce and murder, but Syn leapt first, and with a throttle cry Fuchs dropped his sword with Syn's blade through his neck, and clawing the air, fell backwards, a long black fall, and then a blacker death. Then, high and shrill above the whining of the wind, the curlew cried 3 times. Thomas was late. He tiptoed past the squire's 4-poster and opened the shutters. The squire rolled over and scratched his chest. It crackled and woke him. He yawned and said, "Tell Mrs. Lovell not to put so much starch in my nightshirt, Thomas." He scratched again, let out an oath, and sat up, sucking his finger. Thomas, having seen something most unusual and fearing to be blamed for it, fled. The squire looked down and saw that there was a paper pinned to his nightshirt. He took it off and read, "Dear Squire, here is the 7th spy. For rogue, scoundrel, I, Sir Anthony, even smuggler I may be, but the Scarecrow has always ruled death to a traitor. Here was a traitor to England, whose body may be found in the mud of the great sluice gates, but whose dossier, signed by Robespierre, might interest Mr. Pitt. I wish to pay you this further service, because this man denounced the Comte de Longueuil, your daughter's husband. Hoping that my act will gain for you much honour, and not another proclamation for me, I remain your disobedient servant, the Scarecrow." Sir Anthony was delighted, and started at once composing fresh speeches to Mr. Pitt. After dressing, he wanted to impart his good news to all and sundry, but he had a lonely breakfast because everyone was late. Indeed, Cicely was the only member of the family who eventually appeared, but he was so overjoyed at having someone to talk at that he failed to notice her grave expression when, on reading the letter, she saw something that he had failed to notice. On the back of the scrawled note was a dark stain, which could only be one thing: blood. Whose? Cicely's heart pounded. As soon as her father had departed in his coach for London, she fled across the glebe field to the vicarage. She met the sexton crossing the garden. "Oh, Mr. Mipps, is Dr. Syn all right? I have a strange feeling that he may not be very well this morning." Immediately Mipps was on the defensive. "Now, whatever put that idea into your head, miss? He's never ill, he ain't." "I just wondered, Mr. Mipps, for I could not sleep last night, and from my window I saw strange lights in the direction of the sluice gates. But if you promise me that the vicar is quite well—" Mr. Mipps assured her that indeed Dr. Syn was quite well, but that he was having a nice long rest after his dancings and goings-on. Cicely loved him for the stubborn little watchdog that he was, so, telling him to inform the vicar that if he cared to begin his riding lessons that afternoon, she would bring around a mount, she was gone, sauntering across the bridge. Through his bedroom window, Dr. Syn, lying comfortably in his bed, had heard the talking between his best-loved friends, and loved them all the more. He had a mind to leap out from the window and take her in his arms, but feeling as he did, relaxed and quiet, though his slight wound was painful, his heart was so full of her that all he wished to do was lie and absorb her into his very soul. A great danger had been overcome, was past. So there he lay, and pondered on the glorious possibilities ahead, weaving yet another pattern into his ill-starred life. Mipps was indignant. "Riding lesson, my baganook!" But although the vicar hadn't had a proper sleep for 2 nights, he had set off that afternoon with Miss Cicely. And even Mipps had to admit that he put up a good performance, patting the spirited animal timidly and, after many vain attempts, climbing clumsily into the saddle. They had ridden through the village, where the vicar made much fuss stopping and starting the horse when greeting his amazed parishioners. His foot slipped frequently from the iron, and Cicely watched this clowning happily. Then they were out on the lonely marsh, setting their horses towards Limb Hill. And now, the last farm passed, with it went dear old Dr. Syn. He straightened in his saddle and took command of the surprised animal. Then, turning to Cicely, he deliberately took off his spectacles and grinned boyishly, and they were off. Over this dyke and that, across fields, scattering the sheep, neck to neck they galloped deliriously. Then, straight ahead and up the slopes they climbed towards the Roman camp below Limb Castle. Here they dismounted and let the horses graze, while they sat down, glowing and happy. The sun flashing on lattice panes below brought to Cicely's mind the lights on the sluice gates, and she demanded why he had risked his life, telling him she had seen the Scarecrow's letter to her father. Gravely he reminded her of the conversation at dinner about the rumoured pardon of this rogue, saying that since Barsar had been an enemy of England, his chance of winning it was therefore greater. But to his argument on that count she would have none, saying that she loved him as he was. He leant and kissed her, and her strong fingers caressing his arm betrayed him, for he could not stop the sudden wince of pain. They must go home, she told him tenderly. His arm must be properly dressed. She would see to it. So, mounting their horses, they rode slowly back, loath to leave this darkening spot which had given them this shining hour. Mr. Mipps was extremely busy with the final details of the night's run, and he had some messages for the vicar. So occupied was he with these that he was halfway across the room before he realised that the vicar was behaving like a ladies' man. But his weather eye also registered something else. He tried to attract the vicar's attention, signalling violently, pointing to his master's arm. Dr. Syn looked over Cicely's shoulder and smiled. "'Tis all right, Mr. Mipps. Miss Cicely knows all." Cicely turned, and with the vicar's arms still around her, smiled too. "'Tis all right, Mr. Mipps. Miss Cicely knows the best." "Oh, Captain, whatever have you done to the vicar?" Mipps gasped. "Begging your pardon, miss, but look at you standing about in your shirt-sleeves with the curtains wide and Mr. Hyde on the prowl." He went and closed the curtains. "That there shark don't like draughts. It ain't had so much fresh air since Saratoga." "Thank ye, Master Carpenter," said the vicar. "'Twas careless of me, though tonight I care naught for all the king's horses and revenue men." "No, but they care several oughts for you." And concluding that Miss Cicely knew all, he added reprovingly, "Looks like you're remembering to forget, Cabin." "If you meant by that, Mr. Mipps, that I'm forgetting my old slogan, 'No petticoats aboard,' you need have no fear. Miss Cicely, heaven be praised, is no petticoat." Cicely went across to the little sexton. "Come, give me your hand." Then, with the other clasped round Syn's, she cried, "Now we are indeed an unholy trinity." Mipps was vanquished. "Oh, Miss Cicely, you're the only person I'd be proud to call Mrs. Captain, miss." Syn watched with tender amusement as Cicely thanked Mr. Mipps for making her love Captain Clegg since childhood by telling her such wonderful stories about him. "Oh, those. You wait. I had to shorten sail for 'em, but now you knows, we can cram on all the canvas." "Mipps," warned Syn, smiling, "remember to forget." "Sorry, sir, remember to forget," he repeated, and this suddenly reminded him of something he had indeed forgotten. "Knock me up solid!" he cried. "Jimmy Bone! I just had a message. He went to Aldington to look at the beacon, everything lovely, all ready, but then he goes to the walnut tree to have one, and runs slap into a covey of Bow Street runners." "Not caught?" asked Syn sharply. "No, not as silly as that, but he can't move with all them runners yapping about outside." "So he can't light the beacon." Dr. Syn thought for a moment. Then orders were rapped out. "Slight change of plan, Mr. Mipps. Instead of riding with me, you will lead the Bonington gang from Jesson Flats. I'll see to the beacon myself. The signal is from Double Dyke tonight. I can pick it up from this window. Have Gehenna here under the bridge." He explained to Cicely that when Gehenna was used from the house, he came from a hidden stable beneath the bridge, and that he only had to be called to come out by himself so that he could drop into the saddle. He laughed, telling her that the next riding lesson should be hers upon Gehenna. But then there was a knocking at the door. Mipps peered through the grille. "It's that revenue man. What did I tell you? Prowling." The vicar slipped into his coat and quickly put on his glasses. Cicely sat demurely on the settle. Then Syn nodded to Mipps, and the door was opened. "Who is it, Mr. Mipps?" "Why, sir, it's Mr. Hyde." The revenue man stepped into the room. Dr. Syn welcomed him and introduced Cicely, explaining that she was kindly doing one of his duties tonight, visiting a sick woman to free him for an errand of mercy elsewhere. "Well, I have another errand for you," said Mr. Hyde flatly, "and mine comes first. I've formed some very grave suspicions, sir, and I must ask you to accompany me to the courthouse." "Suspicions?" "I told you, parson, that suspicion was my trade. I also told you that I might even suspect you were you as good a rider as Sir Anthony." Cicely's heart contracted. But then he went on with other explanations. How he had been out upon the marsh, how he had watched the vicarage night after night, seen lights and strange activities. "So, for your own safety, parson, should the Scarecrow pay you a visit, for I've wind that there's a run tonight, you'd better come with me. Oh, I won't put you in the cell, sir, but I have some dragoons who will see to your safety." "But your errand of mercy is very urgent, Dr. Syn," cried Cicely, staring at the vicar. "What if the old woman's light should flicker out without you at hand?" "Do not worry, dear Cicely. I shall be there in time. Come, Mr. Hyde, I will accompany you." "You are right. For the sake of the parish, I should address my safety. But as to these activities, I've seen nothing unusual of late. Have you, Mr. Mipps?" The game continued, and Mipps, as always, was ready. "Well, I did see something scribbled on the sea wall earlier, sir." Dr. Syn was grave, and told the sexton that he should have mentioned it. It might have been something of importance to Mr. Hyde, a clue, perhaps, to the smuggler's activities. Mipps was most apologetic. "Well, if you like to come with me now, Mr. Hyde, I can show you where it is exact." The revenue man was uncertain, but not wanting to miss anything, he allowed himself to be led over to the sea wall. As soon as they were gone, Cicely was at the doctor's side. "Christopher, that man suspects you. Oh, my darling, 'tis all my fault. He must have seen us on the ride. What can we do?" He took her in his arms. "We have faced worse dangers than Mr. Hyde, Mipps and I. But listen, I will not be able to speak to Mipps again. Tell him to give you the Scarecrow's clothes. When you return home, drop the bundle from your bedroom window, and somehow I shall manage to escape and ride, for the last time, Cicely, I promise you." She shook her head. "Never! The Scarecrow will always ride while Aldington Knoll stands high." He marvelled that she could thus take the difficult way. It was only for her sake that he wished to claim the pardon and be quit of his double life. Hearing voices approaching, he put her from him and went to his desk, unlocking a drawer. He took from it a small ivory box, and was back at the fireplace when Hyde and Mipps returned. "Well, did you find anything, Mr. Hyde?" "The tide was in," growled Hyde, certain that he had been fooled. "Come, parson, if you're ready. Will you accompany us, Miss Cobtree?" "Thank you, Mr. Hyde, but I must collect the comforts for the poor woman I am nursing tonight." Dr. Syn patted her hand and thanked her for her good work, and then left with the sullen revenue man. "What's the orders, miss?" asked Mipps when the door was shut. "I'm to drop the Scarecrow's clothes from my bedroom window." But then doubts arose. If only her father had been here, he would never have allowed this outrage. Even Major Faunce might have helped, but his troop had been called back to Dover. "Oh, Mipps, how can he possibly escape?" "Don't you worry, Miss Cicely. We've faced worse dangers than this, Mr. Hyde, the captain and I don't say that at the moment it don't look tricky, but he's quick as lightning in the rigging, is the captain." He went to the old sea chest and collected the necessary clothes. "But how can he do it in time, Mr. Mipps?" "Now look here, miss," he said, giving her the bundle of clothes. "If you're going to be Mrs. Captain, you have to learn that orders is orders. I done it these 20 years and never known him wrong." Then he opened the door, and she went out, running like a young deer across the glebe. Mr. Mipps was checking distances on Dr. Syn's map of Romney Marsh when he heard footsteps on the gravel. He locked the map away and then went to open the door. "Why, Mr. Hyde! Oh, you've come back for the vicar's slippers. Poor old gentleman. Stay here and I'll flip him round to him." "You'll stay where you are," the revenue man growled, stepping inside. and that poor old gentleman is at the moment enjoying himself hugely at a game of dice." "Oh, dice?" Then Mipps started. "Did you say dice, sir?" "Yes, Mr. Sexton, dice." Mipps went casually over to the desk. The drawer was open and empty, and he smiled to himself. "And I'm staying here," said the revenue man, "just to make sure there'll be no run tonight." Mipps thought he'd have some difficulty in preventing it, since the vicar had taken his dice-box, which had never failed them yet. They had acquired this ingenious contraption in the Asias. Carved out of ivory, the shaker had a full space, and ordinary dice could be used until such time as its owner was in trouble. Then, by pushing a spring hidden in the carving, small glass drops fell out and exploded on the table, emitting an odious stench. The Joker was careful to protect himself, but those who smelt it were overcome with violent retching. Mipps was jubilant, and now he had to warn the vicar of Mr. Hyde's presence, so he said he was going to get on with his work on Mrs. Woolley's coffin. "Well, keep in earshot," snapped the revenue man. But once outside, Mipps was off into the darkness. Mr. Hyde prowled around, investigating. Then he returned to the hall and looked for a place to conceal himself, and having marked one, took a generous pull from the brandy bottle on the table. Then he extinguished the lights, save one, and slipped behind the curtains. It was not long before he heard a door open and stealthy footsteps coming towards his hiding place. His pistol at full cock, he was tense, ready. Suddenly the curtains were pulled aside, and he uttered an oath of satisfaction. "The Scarecrow, by all that's fortunate. The revenue man, by all that's damnable." "My patience has been rewarded, Parson Scarecrow." The revenue man laughed unpleasantly and forced the Scarecrow away from the window with his gun. The black figure backed towards the refectory table. Hyde was intoxicated with his cleverness. "I suspected as much when I saw you riding better than the squire. Take off your mask, Dr. Syn." The Scarecrow raised a long, slim arm and swept off the mask, and Hyde stared open-mouthed in dumb surprise. Before him, dressed in those fantastic rags, high-booted, black-gloved, was Cicely Cobtree. She bowed mockingly. "At your service, Mr. Hyde." "Great God, is this a jest?" She laughed. "A very good one, Mr. Hyde, since it never entered your dull wits that the Scarecrow might be a woman." "No, it didn't," he thought. "But she'll get no change from me. Well, Mistress Scarecrow, do not think that being a woman will soften Nicholas Hyde. I'll save you hanging with a bullet, then put back your mask and say shot on sight, as any loyal citizen may do. 2 minutes for a prayer, that's all you'll get from me." Through the window behind him, Cicely saw the flashing light from distant Double Dyke. Involuntarily she shivered, not from fear of death, but of failing him. "Get to your prayer," snapped Hyde. But suddenly she had no need of prayer, for her own unspoken prayer had been answered, and she knew exactly what she had to do. Turning quickly, she snatched at the tablecloth and pulled it along the polished tabletop, bringing Hyde's pistol and the bottle with it to her hand. In an instant she was covering him with his own weapon. "The Scarecrow's health!" she cried, drinking from the brandy bottle. Then, backing towards the door, eyes fierce, she mocked, "Mistress Scarecrow, rise to Aldington to light the beacon for the run." Out onto the bridge she dashed, calling wildly, "Gehenna!" and flinging herself over the parapet, she found herself in the saddle and spurred him up the rise onto the sea-wall road. The revenue man remembered the other pistol in his holster. He wrenched it free and, flinging to the window, broke a pane and levelled the muzzle at the flying figure. He fired, and fired again. As he watched his speeding target, he saw just one spasmodic jerk, which broke the rhythm of its flowing strides. The dice-box rattled. Dr. Syn lost again. The young dragoons, hilarious with drink, urged him to throw once more. Dr. Syn readily agreed. "Faith, gentlemen, what a good evening this has been. But this is positively my last throw, so I trust the dice will not fail me. Dear me, it is hot in here." He took from his pocket a large silken handkerchief and mopped his brow. Then he rose, and with a charming smile held the ivory shaker high while turning away his face, hiding it in his handkerchief, making pretence that he dare not look. He shook, The dice rattled. A sensitive finger felt for the eye of the carved dragon. He threw. The dice shot out and flashed unusually as they bounced from the force of the throw. Suddenly the soldiers were overcome by a ghastly nausea, and a poisonous stench assailed their nostrils. They retched violently, their eyes ran, and through the haze of their vomiting they dimly heard the parson say, "Whatever is the matter? I must run and fetch Dr. Pepper," and they knew no more. Cicely's window was dark, and he felt beneath it for the bundle. It was not there. He knew that neither Cicely nor Mipps would fail him, yet something had gone wrong. A cold fear clutched his heart, and he raced across the glebe. Then, out of the blackness of his shadowed house, leapt Gehenna. Gehenna, with a rider on his back, a slim, lithe figure clean-cut against the sky. Then, with a smashing of glass, a spurt of flame darted from his window, and as he watched in agonized confusion, another flame. It was the second shot. He saw his horse quiver, then plunge on, the rider with it. Which had been hit? As if in answer, his whole spirit seemed to be torn from him in one great wild cry. The revenue man, his pistol still smoking, stood staring out into the moonlight. Deep in his dull soul he knew his action had outstripped his reason, and that he was damned. Then he turned, and saw in the firelit room a vast shadow filling it. He backed, in mesmerized, jerked movements, while slowly, towering towards him, stalked Dr. Syn. Then, suddenly, a red glow suffused the midnight sky, and he knew no more. A few deft strokes, and Syn was gone, out into the night, rushing blindly towards that blood-red signal on the knoll. Cicely had felt Gehenna shiver under her, but calmed him with her hand. She wanted to speak to him, to tell him not to fail her, but no sound came, and she was conscious only of a numbing ache. So she crouched in the saddle, and her arms slipped about his neck. But the animal charged on and up and round the way he knew, right to the skies, stopping with foaming head upon the very pinnacle of Aldington. She slid from the saddle and dragged herself towards the beacon. With numb fingers she felt for the flasher in the Scarecrow's pocket, and gathered all her strength for this one last effort. The straw caught and crackled towards the tarred heart of the beacon, and the flames rose. She could not mount again, but she lay down and slept, while Gehenna called out his trumpetings for help. Heading the cavalcade towards the hills, Mipps heard Gehenna's call. What had happened? Mipps had not been able to find his master, and had carried out his orders as arranged. Now, full of apprehension, he spurred himself towards the beacon, with Vulture and Eagle in his wake. Every window facing the hills reflected a blaze. The run was on. Behind a number of these windows lurked excitement and activity, but behind one all was still. A man was bound to the banisters of the staircase. His body was limp. He might have been dead or alive. The room was deathly quiet. At last there came a sound of horses' hoofs, then footsteps crunched the shingle. Then cloaked figures appeared, carrying the limp shadow of the Scarecrow, and placed it gently on the settle. "You must find the vicar," Mipps said urgently to the night riders, "and pray God you bring him here in time." The night riders vanished. Mipps was desperate. Where was his master? He stood over the settle and with trembling hands removed Cicely's mask. "Why did you not send them to the courthouse?" she whispered. But Mipps had seen the revenue man lashed to the banisters. "Because I knows his work when I sees it, and I knows there ain't 4 walls who can hold him when he's a mind to get out and—" "Orders is orders, Mr. Mipps," she completed. He nodded, then sadly shook his head. She smiled. "And there's a penalty, is there not, for disobeying orders?" And then a twinge of pain twisted her face. "And I must pay it." A voice from the shadows answered her. "Would that I could pay it for you." Mipps turned on the revenue man, who was stirring. "Ah, you dog, so you should, as a reward for foul play." "No, Mr. Mipps, not foul play." Cicely lifted herself. "He shot on sight, as any loyal citizen may do." She asked for some brandy, and then she saw the revenue man looking at her with an expression of desperate guilt on his face. "'Tis our secret, is it not?" she said gently. The revenue man answered her with a newly found sincerity. "Whatever secrets I've learnt tonight shall go no further. "Your teaching shames me, Mistress Parson." She hardly heard him, for a great fear was upon her. "Oh, Mips! Suppose he does not come? There's such a little time. Would that I had known him all your 20 years. She was trembling now, and in a desperate urgency to be near him, begged Mips to tell her some story of him. Mips hesitated, lest he should incriminate his master, but then he saw Hyde's face, and knew that they were safe from him. He held the brandy to her lips, telling her to drink. "Well, I remember one." And then she saw behind him in the doorway what she had prayed to see just this once more. Christopher? As in a trance, the wild-looking shell of Dr. Syn was on his knees beside her. She took his trembling hands. "L'épouvantail, at your service," she smiled. "Forgive such a clumsy rendering of the part. Perhaps, after all, I am just a petticoat, and I was wrong. The Scarecrow is a ghost, for he must always rise while Aldington stands high." As if to prove her words, the beacon flames leapt higher, and the room seemed ablaze. "I should have heeded Mips, but thought you could not do it in the time." He was looking at her in dumb agony, and she leant forward and kissed him. "Dear, kind old Dr. Syn," she whispered. "I am so happy." And she was gone. And with her went the beacon light, flickering softly out. The husky voice of Mr. Hyde broke the silence. "I, too, was wrong. The Scarecrow is a ghost." Then he moved humbly to the door. Mips made no attempt to hinder him. He knew the danger there had passed, and here, at hand, a greater danger must be reckoned with. Mips was desperate. Since the night the doctor had carried Cicely to the courthouse, he had not uttered a word. For 3 days he had not eaten nor slept, and Mips had watched him pacing the library at night and striding the marsh by day. The sexton was not alone in his anxiety. The village had been told that Miss Cicely had met with a riding accident, but certain things mystified them. The sudden departure of Mr. Hyde, Dr. Syn's neglect of parish work, he was not even at the funeral, his wild appearance and his eternal vigil on the marsh, the squire's absence in London, and above all the fact that the Scarecrow had issued no orders and a vast organisation was at a standstill. One person, however, did understand. Miss Gordon, though profoundly shocked, determined to keep her promise of friendship. It was on the 4th day that she encountered Mr. Mips, a sad little figure sitting upon the sea wall, staring through his telescope towards the Roman steps at Lymm. She begged him to let her look. There, in the circle of the telescope, framed like a miniature, was what she had been expecting. She turned to the worried little sexton, and together they evolved a plan. Returning to the vicarage, the old lady prepared a tasty meal. Mips saddled the vicar's white pony and filled panniers with food and wine, and Miss Agatha set off. "And so, Mr. Mips," she had said, "if he can eat the meal, drink the wine, and read the book, he's cured." A couple of hours later, Miss Agatha was sitting in the sunshine upon the Roman pavement. Some life had returned to Dr. Syn's face. The food and French wine had done him good, but the red-leather book upon his knees, as Aunt Agatha had predicted, was his real salvation. He turned the pages, his face reflecting what he read, at times gay, then sad, amused, and tender. Then he went back to the beginning, rereading the title, written in childish handwriting. "Cicely Cobtree, her book, given to me by great Aunt Agatha. I shall keep it for my journal. Very special thoughts and happenings." Strange that the first happening should be of him. "My dear Papa's best friend, Christopher Syn, has returned from the Americas. He tells exciting stories." Then, further on, "Dr. Syn is now our vicar. I like church now. Though I had always imagined for myself a fair gentleman, I now know I was wrong. I like his eyes best." Another page. "Maria had a nightmare about the Scarecrow. People say he is a ghost, though Papa said he is only a smuggler. I think he sounds exciting, but I still like Dr. Syn best." More leaves turned, and now the vicar's face was grave. My dear sister Charlotte was buried today. They say it was a hunting accident, but I think it had something to do with the Scarecrow. I dreamt that she died for him. I wish I could have done it, but I would rather die for Dr. Syn. Here the tears blurred his vision, and he turned, seeming to see her by his side. But she vanished. Then once more he sought her in the book. Today Mr. Mipps told me another wonderful story about Captain Clegg, how he escaped by doing a trick with a tablecloth. I practiced it and broke Mamma's best vase. She was very cross, but it does work. I wish I could make up my mind which I love best, the Scarecrow, Captain Clegg, or Dr. Syn. I still think Dr. Syn. Aunt Agatha watched him as he turned to the last entry. Now the writing was mature. The Scarecrow will always ride while Aldington Knoll stands high. And below, my riddle has been answered. I love all three. Aunt Agatha leant over and closed the book. She was right. You cannot quit. No more talk of confessions. We're all of us pirates, she said, her eyes very wise, bearing down upon each other in full sail, flashing broadsides, glorious encounter, then we part for distant seas. He looked at her. His brow quivered. Then he rose, and sweeping her an elaborate bow, said, "Welcome, pirate. You, Agatha Gordon of Beldornian Kildrummy, are worthy of the brotherhood." That night the vicarage library resembled Clegg's cabin on the good ship Imogen. Plans were being made. The room was heavy with tobacco smoke. The brandy was good. The chairs were tilted back, and 4 pairs of feet were on the table. 4 pairs. Top boots, Gentleman James. Buckled shoes, Dr. Syn. Sea boots, Didymus Mipps. And a small pair of elegant French slippers, Agatha Gordon. Glasses were raised, and Clegg's pirate song roared out from 4 throats.